everybody. Thank you for being here. Welcome to the Bellevue City Council regular meeting for April 25th, 2022. City Clerk, could you please do the roll call?
Mayor Robinson.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Newhouse. Here.
Councilmember Barksdale, could you please lead us in the flag salute?
Justice for all.
We have 3 proclamations tonight. The first one is Distracted Driving Awareness Month, and Deputy Mayor, could you please read that one?
Whereas more than 700 injury crashes involve distracted driving on an average day, and the economic toll of all vehicle crashes in the U.S. annually exceeds $400 billion. And whereas Bellevue experienced 38 serious injury crashes and 5 traffic fatalities total during 2020 and 2021, some involving distracted driving. And whereas talking on a mobile phone, even in hands-free mode, texting, adjusting your radio, or programming a GPS device can divert your attention away from driving and result in distractions. And whereas Bellevue residents and all Americans deserve to live in communities that promote safe driving behaviors and healthy lifestyles. And whereas preventing distracted driving injuries and deaths requires the cooperation of all levels of government, employers, and the public. And whereas the City of Bellevue and the National Safety Council works to promote policies, practices, and procedures leading to increased safety on roads and elsewhere. And whereas Bellevue's Vision Zero effort strives to eliminate serious injury and fatal collisions on city streets by 2030. And whereas people drive more as the weather warms, with more vulnerable road users walking and bicycling, it's imperative to focus attention on ways to prevent traffic crashes. Now, therefore, I, on behalf of Lynn Robinson, Mayor of the City of Bellevue, Washington, and on behalf of its City Council, do hereby proclaim April 2022 as Distracted Driving Awareness Month in Bellevue and urge all residents to observe this time by practicing safe driving behaviors and pledging to drive distraction-free.
Thank you. The next one is Internship Awareness Month. And I'll read this. Whereas National Internship Awareness Month was established in 2017 to recognize the benefits of internships for students, residents, and businesses, and whereas the workforce talent pipeline in the City of Bellevue depends on the continued development of workers skilled in their chosen fields, and internship programs are uniquely able to anticipate and meet the changing demands of the local workforce needs. And whereas internships are proven pathways to fulfilling careers in the 3 highest demand industries in Bellevue, including technology, healthcare, and business services, and whereas internships are critical in allowing businesses to give back to their community and expand their talent pool by preparing Bellevue workers with the qualifications, skills, and competencies workers need to progress and succeed in their career pathways. And whereas the City of Bellevue's Workforce Development Program will connect residents to opportunities, including internships, as well as connect employers to the local talent pool by offering workforce navigation assistance and partnering with workforce service providers, businesses, and community-based organizations to highlight the benefits of internships and expand the number of opportunities available in the city. And whereas the Center for Career Connections, part of the RISE Learning Institute at Bellevue College, is recognized for their support to the local community and students by providing one-on-one career guidance, internship development resources, professional development workshops, and job fairs. Now therefore, I, Lynn Robinson, Mayor of the City of Bellevue, Washington, and on behalf of its City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2022 as Internship Awareness Month in Bellevue, and am pleased to note it will be promoted in collaboration between the City of Bellevue, Bellevue College Center for Career Connections, community partner employment resources, and businesses in the city through recognition of the hard work of interns, promotion of available internship opportunities, and encouragement for businesses to develop internship programs. And the last one is National Week of Action Proclamation, read by Councilmember Zahn.
Thank you, Mayor.
Whereas the City of Bellevue acknowledges that Bellevue and surrounding areas exist on the ancestral homelands of the Coast Salish people, the original caretakers of this land who are still here, fostering their rich and vibrant culture and continuing to honor their heritage. And whereas 3 out of 4 Native women will be physically assaulted in their lifetime, and the second leading cause of death for Indigenous girls ages 1 to 4 is murder, according to the Urban Indian Health Institute, while the CDC lists murder as the 3rd leading cause of death for American Indian and Alaska Native women. And whereas since 2017, grassroots actions have grown at the local, regional, national, international level to recognize May 5 as a National Day of Awareness for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, MMIW, to honor and call for justice for all missing and murdered Indigenous women around the globe. And whereas a National Day of Action takes place April 29th to May 5th, 2022, to call all communities to action in honor of the thousands of missing and murdered Indigenous women across the United States. And whereas tribal governments and communities report the losses of Indigenous women are devastating to both tribal communities and the nation, as insufficient resources and data, complex legal frameworks, underreporting of assaults, and lack of clarity on jurisdictional responsibilities has exacerbated barriers and hindered efforts to locate those who are missing. And whereas Bellevue's vision is to welcome the world and advance a culturally competent, caring, and resilient community where its members care for each other and honor the experiences and wisdom of our diverse population while pursuing and supporting equitable outcomes for communities of color. Now, therefore, I, on behalf of Lynn Robinson, Mayor of the City of Bellevue, Washington, and on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim April 29 to May 5, 2022 as National Day of Action for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls in Bellevue, Washington, recognizing the unique and the disproportionate rates of violence against this population, and calling on our community to join in saying enough is enough by taking action through participation in virtual events, exploration of available resources, or organizing action through participation in virtual events, exploration of available resources, or organizing awareness activities in your community. Signed, Lynn Robinson, Mayor of the City of Bellevue.
Thank you. All right, before we approve the agenda, we need to amend it to put ordinance 6659 under other ordinances. Deputy Mayor, is there a motion to do?
Certainly, Mayor. So I move to approve the agenda amended to remove item 8B, which is ordinance 6659, from the consent calendar and place it as item 12A under the other ordinances, resolutions, and motions for discussion and action.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. City Clerk, do we have anybody signed up for oral communications?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Excuse me. This evening there are 12 pre-registered speakers. And as a reminder to speakers, oral communications is limited to a period of no more than 30 minutes. Speakers are allowed up to 3 minutes to make their comments, and a maximum number of 3 persons are permitted to speak to any one side of one topic. If you're participating via Zoom, I can see you and I will send you a prompt to unmute. As soon as we can hear you, your time will begin. If you're participating in the room, please step to the middle seat and begin making your comments. So with that, I'll call our first speaker, which is Bill Finkbeiner. And Mr. Finkbeiner, I believe you're, yep, there you are.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. My name is Bill Finkbeiner. I've worked in Bellevue for the last 20 years. I'm here tonight to thank you for considering moving forward with the Wilburton rezone and continuing this important work. And wanted to just take a couple minutes here to talk about some of the reasons why I think it's important that you move ahead on this, and why I think it's very timely. So first of all, when we look at the Wilburton neighborhood, the transportation capacity is one of the things that just jumps out, I think, immediately. When you look at the billions of dollars that have been spent on light rail, on the improvements to 120th and 124th, on improvements like the East Rail corridor going through the district, it really shows that this neighborhood is one of the most well-served neighborhoods in the region, with all sorts of transportation options, everything from bike riding to walking to light rail. In addition to this, it's obvious too that there are 4 different on-ramps and off-ramps to 405 directly into the Wilburton neighborhood. So it really has the capacity, and I think that's one of the big things. And the other infrastructure that's also there, obviously, is the parks. With the East Side Rail Corridor running through, this is really a park-like amenity. And then a thing that's easy to forget is also the grocery stores there, making it really an opportunity to be what's called a 10-minute neighborhood, a walking neighborhood, where all of your amenities are nearby with the 4 different grocery stores that are available there. So that's the capacity that's there. And then the preparation that's already been done by the Citizen Advisory Committee, Wilburton City Citizens Advisory Committee, that was ably chaired by Councilmember Barksdale and delivered their report to you in 2018. They really laid the groundwork, obviously, for what can be done in this neighborhood to really improve it, not just to upzone it and add density, but also to make improvements that will benefit the entire city and the region. So the capacity is there, the preparation is there, and the neighborhood is ready. You'll see other property owners and interested parties here tonight, and I'm sure you've also heard from them. Really, when you look at the improvements and increased density that's gone into Bell Red, and then obviously with downtown, this is an area that really has a tremendous amount of potential to help the city solve really pressing issues such as affordable housing and really help grow the economy here. So with that, I just want to thank you for doing this, and thank you for your service to the city, and appreciate you having me.
Thank you for your comments. The next speaker on the list is Neil Molnig.
Good evening, Mayor Robinson and honorable council members. My name is Neil Molnick, and I'm here on behalf of the owners of the property at the northwest corner of Northeast 4th and 116th Avenue Northeast. Our current tenant is the AutoNation Ford dealership. However, we're very interested in possible alternatives for long-term uses and other building forms there. Our families have lived on the east side, and we've been owners and developers of commercial properties in Bellevue, Seattle, and Tacoma for over a century. We have a good grounding in commercial real estate development, and we see this property as an important part of the future of Wilburton. I'm here to encourage the Council and Planning Commission to prioritize the Wilburton commercial area and to assign the necessary resources to complete the planning process as quickly as possible. Substantial public investments now completed, as you just heard about, or that are underway or imminent, include 2 light rail stations, road network improvements, and new and upgraded facilities in the Wilburton area. These far-sighted improvements provide a solid footing for an exciting land use and development vision for this emerging district, as envisioned in the CAC report that was referenced as well. These investments should be complemented with planning and land use code updates that are put in place in time to seize the opportunity of a strong market and growing demand at Bellevue. The large-scale developments envisioned in the CAC report require considerable time and resources, so time is of the essence to capitalize on the booming cycle. The property between Northeast 4th and Northeast 4th and Northeast 6th on 116th is an important part of the Grand Connection, the Council's vision to create a link between Maidenbower Bay Park through downtown across I-405 to the East Side Rail Corridor. There is great synergy and exciting promise between these linked developments. We urge the Council to seize these opportunities and prioritize the completion of the Wilburton Plan so that appropriate development can occur next to this major civic initiative. We're aware that there's constraints on the city's resources and many competing priorities, but we think that it would be a mistake to not give Wilburton the highest priority. There's few opportunities that stand to generate the overall positive impact and benefits that Wilburton can deliver. We encourage the city to explore all possibilities, including retaining outside assistance under the guidance of city staff to assist with planning efforts. Further, we think it's essential that all of Wilburton be rezoned as quickly as possible. The solution to enabling development is to prioritize the overall completion of the Wilburton rezone process. Thanks very much for your time and consideration.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is joining us via Zoom, and it's Mackenzie Toomey. Miss Toomey, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
If you could speak a little bit louder, that would be great, but then you can begin your comments now.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. My name is Mackenzie Toomey, and my address is 1 Crescent Key, Bellevue, Washington, 98006. I'm 16 years old, a junior at the International School, and I'm a member of the Bellevue Youth Link, my school's Green Team, and the Sustainability Ambassadors. I care about the climate because I am of the generation who will live with the repercussions of our actions today. I want our future generations to have the same beautiful world we have today, and that requires care taken right now. I have worked towards sustainability by pushing and succeeding to implement compostable silverware in my school, leading events where I engage youth with sustainability, and by taking action in my own home to increase our energy efficiency. Thank you for your support for the recently launched environmental stewardship projects, including the heat pump campaign, helping residents learn more about saving energy and money in their homes, and the Sustainable Bellevue Climate Challenge portal. I appreciate that Bellevue has gotten started on implementing our environmental stewardship plan because quickly and effectively implementing the plan is really
Can
important
you
for
ask
all
her
of
to
our
speak up,
futures.
please?
The recent IPCC report. Yeah. Yes.
An issue hearing you in the room.
Can you hear me better now?
No.
Oh boy. Is this better at all?
A little bit.
A little bit. If you could continue, we'll give you a few seconds back.
The recent IPCC report makes it very clear. We must take strong action now to reduce our emissions to achieve a 50% reduction by 2030, which is Bellevue's stated goal. In 2021, Bellevue spent only a fraction of what's needed to implement the environmental stewardship plan. It's important that Bellevue fully fund the plan because this funding will help us achieve our agreed upon climate goals. Full funding will allow Bellevue to implement greener transportation to schools, including safer biking and walking paths, and raise the energy efficiency of our homes and businesses. My school, the International School, will be rebuilt soon. I would love to see staffing and funds directed towards ensuring a high level of energy efficiency. Also, I have been learning about other American cities of Bellevue size who have been achieving much greater reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. These cities have more sustainability staff than Bellevue on a per capita basis. I appreciate the knowledge, skill, and dedication of our staff. However, we need to make sure we have enough staff to move as quickly as possible on implementing the environmental stewardship plan. To ensure a livable future for me, my peers, and the future generations, it is imperative that we take climate action now. Please do everything you can to fully fund the implementation of the environmental stewardship plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Toomey. If you can still hear me, can you please email your comments to council@bellevuewa.gov? I apologize for the audio issues in the room. Thank you. And with that, our next speaker on the list is Jack Mccullough. Mr. Mccullough is here in person.
Thank you, Jeremy. Members of the council, before I start, I just have to say, it's so great to be here in front of you again. I kind of want to bask in this post-COVID moment, but I do have a couple comments, so I'll jump into that. Last month, I emailed you about Wilburton and about the Wilburton Connection, which is a 6.6-acre site at the location where the Grand Connection meets East Trail. And we urge you to prioritize action on this. And I sent you on Friday some further thoughts on that, which I just want to address tonight. Steve Kramer and Andrew Coates are here tonight, and we'll be looking forward to speaking to you with some additional information on that front. The planning for Wilburton began more than 15 years ago, and some of you will recall the work we did on Northeast 4th and 120th and weaving the street, between Home Depot and Best Buy and all of the work that went into that back then. That was the result of the prior planning effort that started about 15 years ago. Part of what happened then was there was a lot going on, some of you will recall, in that area. There was talk about a Sonics arena. There was talk about maybe Children's Hospital wouldn't get their master plan in Seattle, and so they would come over to Bellevue with their full campus. And the planning effort at the time, Matt Terry was the director, made a special point to isolate on 116th an area called the Special Opportunity Area, which is the location of the Grand Connection. It's in your comprehensive plan, and I've cited to you in the materials I sent you on Friday, policy SWI-5, which calls for land use designations for transit supportive uses in that particular area. So we've been waiting, obviously, a long time for this opportunity to come along, and it's finally here. I think the plan that I've laid out for you doesn't require action on the new Wilburton sub-area plan in order to move forward here, because we already have a comprehensive plan policy. So what I've outlined for you is a plan that would allow you to use that policy, conduct SEPA review, as you have for downtown and East Main using an expanded checklist, and adopt a land use code amendment to enable the adoption of a development agreement for that area. That can all be done in a relatively short period of time. And the councils before you laid the groundwork, the foundational work for all of that to occur. So I wanted to urge you to move forward with the Wilburton plan. That's great, but to act with urgency if you can on this opportunity to nab the King County Energy District while it still exists, and to take the chance to complete the Grand Connection and to complete the work, the $100 million of work that's being done on East Trail here in this particular part of Seattle, or part of Bellevue, pardon me. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. McCullough. The next speaker on the list is Court Olson.
Thank you, Charmaine. And good to see you all in person again, council members. I won't take my full 3 minutes tonight, which I'm sure you'll appreciate. I have asked Michelle to put a handout on all of your desks, so you'll have that little take-home reading tonight when you're suffering from insomnia and need something to read. I wanted to just share with you some personal feelings on why this environmental stewardship effort is so critical to climate change. But first, I wanted to just comment on the complexities of climate change. I've been studying this, as you know, I'm sure, for many years now, and had a lot of heads up when the green building movement started at the turn of the century. But it is a really, really complex problem. I doubt if there's anybody on the planet that knows all of the pieces in this jigsaw puzzle, can even identify them all. I certainly can't. And it's complicated in terms of size and shape of the pieces and the colors and so forth. And so that's what makes this challenge so hard. Nobody can get all of their arms around it, and it's really hard to understand the complexities. And I can appreciate anybody in the city, including all the council members here, as intelligent as you all are, having a challenge figuring out what to do. And so now that we're reviewing, getting an update on the environmental stewardship plan tonight, a few of us and People for Climate Action took the time to review all of those 77 actions in that plan and give you some comments based on the knowledge that we have about what other cities are doing and the complexities of climate change. So that's on your desks tonight. I'm sure you won't read it tonight, but I've also sent it out by email, so you have it at home on your laptops if you wish. And I urge you to just read through the comments. I don't think it'll take you more than a half hour to read through the comments we've made, and I hope you find it helpful in evaluating where we need to go from here on the environmental stewardship plan, especially on the climate change front. So thanks for your time. Good seeing you all. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. The next speaker on the list is TJ Woosley. Mr. Woosley. And
Thank you, Mayor Robinson, council members. Great to see everybody. Everything takes a little longer than it used to. I'm here to speak to the Wilburton. It's nice to see the city of Bellevue pick the Wilburton project back up. You have our full encouragement to do so. Our family's been involved in providing business locations in this area since 1968, 54 years. Wilburton should be Bellevue's next high-need accommodation/growth area. Most of us are aware of our incredible economic horsepower here in Bellevue and are thankful for it. Our citizens want and need this Wilburton project finished to accommodate the growth forthcoming, especially with regard to the demand and cost of housing and the transportation infrastructure that was mentioned before. When any project gets developed, it requires alignment of all the parties: the landowner, the developer, the lenders and equity partners, the contractor, tenants customers. They all need to be confident that the market's there. Well, our market's definitely here. So, for the city of Bellevue to get this moving and done as quickly as possible will allow the rest of us to do our part to accommodate this demand. So let's go big and let's go fast. Go for it. Thank you.
thank you, Mr. Woosley. Our next speaker on the list is Marguerite Richard. Miss Richard.
He told me I didn't have to touch this anyway, but I did anyway. Maybe that'll give me some good blessings coming out of this microphone. I'm Marguerite Richard. I come all the way from Seattle, Washington, where everything is not great right now. We're not thoroughly open up for business. I don't really understand why. I know we had a pandemic, but there's a lot of ick on the end of the pan, if that makes sense. So I'm going to talk about clarity is law, so that the people know that which you are doing are legal. And I think that was President Bush's words anyway, so okay, I use his words. People say use your own words, but I used it. And so it provides more clarity for our professionals who do not want to break the law. And I'm speaking of Bruce Harrell right now. He's the mayor of Seattle. He said, well, how do you know that? Well, Lurkin Durkin did it. So I figured he could do it too, right behind her. But we have to protect the citizens of this country within the law. It's like, how may I help you to help me? Does that sound good for the 21st century? How is that done? I'm still trying to figure that out at my age so that I can teach the next generation that, yeah, you won't get shot with no knock like Amir Locke, because he had the gun on him. He didn't know what was coming, but he's gone now. Then there's another guy they just buried, Patrick. He was running. Harriet Tubman took care of that. Run for what? She ran and she ran and she ran and she ran. Teach them, don't run. They always say, stand up like a man and take it like a man. I'm not no man. I'm 100% woman. And some people don't even like that. So where are we in this puzzle? Huh? In this great wide world of hope that they call it. Can you teach me something about Black Lives Matter? Everybody scattered because Black lives are supposed to matter. And then they put the signs in our city hall telling us that, but you don't have to do nothing about it. Just make them think like they're still crazy. You know, like that movie Stir Crazy. I mean, like, hey, I get to come over here again and talk to you, huh? But I don't live over here. And they said, help your community. The community is everywhere. Anywhere I go, that's my community. That's who I serve, everybody. I don't care what race. And like you said, don't clap. Well, they have this thing called clap back.
Thank you, Ms. Richard. The next speaker on the list is QT Jobs, and Ms. Jobs is joining us via Zoom. Ms. Jobs, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, and I'm going to ask our BTV staff to raise the volume, please. Thank you. Ms. Jobs, you can begin your comments now.
Thank you so much. Good evening, Council. My name is Kutsi Jobs, and my husband, firefighter engineer Justin Jobs, is a 19-year Bellevue employee who submitted a religious exemption for the COVID-19 vaccine and has not been allowed to work since October 19th, 2021. Last week, we drove 2 hours from our home in Linden to speak with you, but we were not allowed to do so. Admittedly, that was pretty disappointing. I spoke at the Bothell City Council meeting later in the week, and it was really refreshing to see their council members engaged and attentive. They allowed an unlimited number of comments from the public on any given topic. The same has been true at the Redmond City Council meetings. And while I know that this could be tiresome for council members, it does seem that as publicly elected officials, the public comment time would be invaluable to you. Anyhow, indulge me for a moment. I have homeschooled our 5 children for the last 16 years, and I also teach a class of 15-year-olds every week. Studies show that if you learn something in a song, you'll remember it more easily. So at the risk of embarrassing myself, but in hopes that you'll remember me and my comments, I'm going to teach you a little song about the scientific method that I teach to my students. It goes like this. The scientific method is question, research, hypothesis, analysis, results, conclusion. Now, you'll notice that the very first part of that song is question. The very first part of science is questioning things. So I have some questions for you tonight. You might want to write these down so you can do your own research on them and respond accordingly. And as we all know, I only have 3 minutes, so I'm going to go fast. What was the rate of transmission of COVID-19 within the fire department before the vaccine was available? What was the rate of transmission in the department after the vaccine was available and only the vaccinated firefighters remained? How long does natural immunity from COVID-19 last? How long lasting and robust is vaccine-induced immunity compared to natural immunity? How has the department compared and vaccinated employees' antibodies to unvaccinated employees' natural antibodies? And what were the results? Do unvaccinated employees actually pose a greater threat to the community? What does the evidence show? Are you aware that studies coming out of the UK reveal that vaccinated individuals are 5 times more likely to catch COVID-19? Are you familiar with the study from Dr. Thomas Ray, the director of King County EMS, who showed that properly fitting personal protective equipment provides nearly 100% protection from transmission or infection in first responders, including when these responders are working on COVID-positive patients in highly aerosolized response situations? I guess that's about all of my time tonight, so thank you for listening to my comments. I'll be sending you each an email to aid in your research of these important questions, and hopefully that little song will get stuck in your head so that you'll remember to look into this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jobs. Our next speaker is Michael Fuller, and Mr. Fuller, I see you at the table. Your comments will begin now.
Honorable Michael Fuller, sui juris, private attorney general, juris de juris, meaning I'm not under the control of slave masters. Now, Black Lives Matters. This is not to change it or to dream Black Lives Matter can believe in. Y'all making all these illegal and unconstitutional laws for unauthorized, undocumented aliens at the time of September 11th. Taxpayers spending $338.3 billion on unauthorized, undocumented aliens. And our veterans sleeping on the street. The reason I brought this picture, because y'all don't talk about our veterans. This is my daddy who fought in the United States Air Force during both Korean War and Vietnam War. This is my stepfather in World War II. What gives you the right thinking you above the law? Well, you note this for the record. You not above the law. And you must take this mindfully. Government, city, county, state is a fiction. I only hold the ones accountable. They put their hand up like this and say, I do. Only hold you by your oath to office. I'm trying to put you in federal penitentiary. Bruce Howell, he's sad. The mayor, he's sad. We want him out of there. And y'all putting all these illegal immigrants in government? Well, I don't call it, y'all call it government. But in Black Lives Matter's community, you must cease and desist now. You're not above the law. I'm talking to all of y'all. Bruce Hurl and the whole gang in Seattle. And I was telling her, that flag does say George Washington. He wasn't the president in 1889. John Hanson was. Read your history. Black Lives Matter. This is not the changes or the dream that Black Lives Matter can believe in. Every one of y'all that took that oath, I'll hold you accountable. And I'm not new to this, I'm true to this.
Thank you, Mr. Fuller. The next speaker on our list is Alex Zimmerman.
Behold, it's not good. Sie Heil, my damn Nazi fascist mob bandita. My name Alex Zimmerman, and I want to speak about something what is, I think, very good. You open meeting to public. What is name of this? Oh, hybrid. I think hybrid before. I know hybrid before only from Toyota, but you very good. You make hybrid too. Yeah, it's better than nothing. So situation what as I spend right now, I want to explain to you. You probably very good because your salary very small. Comparable, for example, to consul, King Country consul and your mayor, ex-mayor, Balducci, who have $150,000 salary. If for 2 years sitting home is a part-time job, together with 4 assistants who have $80,000 salary, so only $500,000 salary, part-time jobs. That's not exactly what is we pay you. You know what is meant for part-time job. For my understanding, nobody from this council in King Country, in Seattle, who makes same money in Seattle, almost $140,000, have biggest salary in the United States of America. A part-time job is very good, I understand this, but not for government. What is we pay? It's my money, and I am a boss of you, all of it. In another 330 million American, I'm sorry, I'm not alone. So in this situation, we're asking very simple, why this pardon elected official who represent people never donate a penny or dollar for 2 years? What is this, a welfare? Oh, you give them food stamp too? I don't know about this. Let me know how much. So that's exactly what is I want to explain to you right now. The situation very simple. Balducci is a chair, and I call the office many times. They not want open hybrid hearing. Hybrid is better than nothing. Why they not doing this? A 9 consul, what is cost us $9 million per year, don't want doing nothing. Why you doing it? They not. Same in Seattle story, you know what it means? Seattle Times print article. After I spoke with Seattle Times, they print article in about ask where is will be open. She don't answer. And this not surprise me because she's officially mentally sick person. I never see before in my life. So you elect somebody be a president, what is have a mental condition. Oh, I'm sorry. Sleepy Joe have a mental condition too. So nothing unusual for America. You bring everybody to collapse. Sie Heil, my Führer, stop this. Come back to America. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Zimmerman. That does bring us to the 30-minute mark for oral communications. There were 2 additional pre-registered speakers. I would ask if you have comments, please email them to council@bellevuelaw.gov. And with that, Mayor, that closes oral communications.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, we have a report of our city manager, Mr. Miyake.
Yes, can you hear me, Mayor and council members? So, good evening, Mayor and council members. I have one item under the manager's report this evening, and that is to introduce some new leadership team members recently hired by the city in both the manager's office as well as in community development. Starting with the hires in the manager's office, I'd like to introduce Diane Carlson, who is sitting on my right. Diane. Diane is no stranger to the city. She has worked at the city from 2002 to 2012 as the Director of Governmental Relations before taking positions in King County, both the County Exec's office as more recently with Metro. In both jobs, she took on very high priority projects. She has been hired as one of the deputy city managers. She fills the deputy slot most recently vacated by Kate Behrens. Diane brings a wealth of experience in strategic planning, policy analysis, and operations. She is a longtime Bellevue resident, and we welcome her back home. Welcome back home, Diane.
Thank you, Brad.
The second person I'd like to introduce is Genesee Atkins. Genesee, can you stand so people could see who you are? So Genesee Atkins was recruited and hired to fill our newly created position of Chief of External Affairs, whose duties will include aligning our strategic efforts in governmental affairs and communications, as well as providing leadership on certain high-priority city issues that we are faced right now. Genesee joins the city after successfully leading strategic growth and infrastructure initiatives in Washington for 2 engineering firms, as well as serving in leadership positions at the state, King County, the University of Washington, the City of Seattle, and a number of nonprofits. Genesee is well equipped for this job. She has built and led effective coalitions over the last 2 decades, as well as played key leadership roles in the resolution of controversial issue, and like Diane, is very highly regarded in the region. So please join me in welcoming Genesee Atkins. Welcome. So moving on to the Community Development Department, I'd like to introduce and welcome back Mike Cotterman to the City of Bellevue as our new Community Development Director. Like Diane, Mike is, again, no stranger to Bellevue. Mike has worked for the City of Bellevue from 2007 to 2018 before moving to Bothell to become their Community Development Director. While in Bellevue, though, Mike led a number of high-priority and highly visible projects, including leading the East Main Station Area Planning, East Link Best Practices, and the city's affordable housing strategy. Mike actually has over 40 years of experience in the planning profession, in which over 30 of those have been in the Puget Sound region. I have worked with Mike in his career with the city and hold him in the highest esteem when it comes to his professionalism, integrity, and work ethic. Like Diane, we welcome back Mike Cotterman back home to the City of Bellevue. Mike, are you there you are. Thank you. Lastly, I'd just like to point out Mike Brennan is also in the city manager's office, sitting up to my right in front of us. Mike has graciously agreed to help us out in the city manager's office as we are faced with many issues with respect to growth, especially in the area of land use and comprehensive planning. Mike has just been a tremendous asset when he was in his department in development services, but even more so in the manager's office. And I just want to thank Mike for stepping up. Thank you, Mike. And with that, that completes my report this evening, Mayor.
We are on to consent calendar. Is there a motion? Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we have 2 study session items tonight. Mr. Miyake, would you like to introduce the first one?
Mayor. The first item is an informational update on the implementation status of the city's environmental stewardship initiative. I think we have staff coming up. Yeah, there we go. By way of background, implementing the environmental stewardship initiatives, one of the council's 2021-2023 priorities. In addition, the council has requested quarterly updates, and tonight's presentation represents the second 2022 quarterly council update. Again, tonight's presentation is informational, therefore no formal direction is being requested of the council this evening. Joining us this evening is Mike Cotterman, Director, Emil King, Assistant Director for Planning, Jennifer Ewing, Environmental Stewardship Program Manager, all three from the Community Development Department, and Anna Hagerup, Resource Conservation Program Manager from the Finance and Asset Management Department. With that, I'm going to turn it over to the team to begin the presentation.
Thank you for the introduction, City Manager Miyake, and good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and members of Council. Staff from Community Development and Finance and Asset Management are here tonight to report progress on actions that the city and our community partners are taking to further the 2021 to 2025 Environmental Stewardship Plan. As we enter into the second year of this 5-year implementation plan, essentially month 16 of a 60-month action plan, it's good to reflect on the range of work being undertaken now and the momentum we're gaining. As I reflect back on the work that the city is doing along with our community partners, it's very wide-ranging. You're going to hear tonight about energy improvements for buildings, planning for how we get around from a mobility standpoint, an air quality assessment that we're doing, pre-work we're doing regarding our tree regulations, and also a range of enhanced engagement. While we, 4 of us, are the ones relaying progress tonight, we are representing many staff in the city across a half dozen different departments who are working on the actions in the plan, as well as the important efforts of our community partners. So I'd now like to turn things over to Jennifer and Anna, who will go through the update for you tonight.
Great, thank you. Good evening, Mayor Robinson, Deputy Mayor Newenhouse, and members of the council. Good to be with you this evening. Our last presentation to council was in early February. Again, tonight's update is for information only, focusing on our progress over the last quarter with implementing the plan. We'll talk a bit about how we're doing overall. We'll give some highlights of a couple key projects we've been working on, and then talk a bit about what's coming up next. So just to recap, back in February, we presented our work plan for this year. This slide summarizes a lot of the kind of major projects we're working on. This isn't necessarily the kind of all-encompassing list of actions, but a number of the kind of higher profile projects that we're working on, and then the little stars there are meant to indicate things that we started this year. A handful of the projects that we're working on this year we began last year and are continuing into this year. And then, underpinning all of that work is, of course, the enhanced engagement that we're doing, as directed by council to continue the engagement we started as part of the plan update. So we have our sustainability leaders group of sustainability experts and our resident engagement, which we'll talk more about. So some of the highlights for the past quarter, these are focused more on our kind of external projects, and then Anna will talk more about the work we've been doing for our city operations. A couple kind of key projects we've been working on: the Clean Buildings Technical Support Program. At the last council update, I gave kind of more of a spotlight on that program. We've met or exceeded our kind of first goal of getting 80 energy benchmarks complete by the end of March. And now we're working with buildings in Bellevue to support them on complying with the Washington State Clean Buildings Act. And we've already supported 3 buildings in Bellevue with applying for early adopter incentives. We're excited to be working with the Maidenbauer Center. That building needs, to implement some energy efficiency measures to get into compliance, and our consultant team of engineers is working with them to help them kind of put together their capital plan, figure out what incentive money they're eligible for, and get all the paperwork together for that. I forget the timing, a couple weeks ago, the mobility implementation plan came to council and was recently adopted. That's another pretty major accomplishment led by the transportation department. They're moving, into implementation now. And again, we've been continuing the enhanced engagement effort. We had a town hall for our residents back in February. We've been meeting with our sustainability leaders group, and then also we've had a number of meetings with our working group focused on residential energy efficiency, working with that group to help us develop the home energy retrofit program. And then a couple other projects have started, looking at updating our tree canopy assessment work, looking at some best practices around air quality and planning. And then the last two projects on the list are the two that I'll kind of go into a little more detail on with the project spotlights. So the first one is the heat pump campaign. This program is still under development. We're working with 4 other East Side cities that are all also members of the K4C, the King County Cities Climate Collaboration. We have kind of peeled off a bit because a few of our cities, we're still part of the K4C, but just working a little more closely with some of the East Side cities. Bellevue, Kirkland, and Redmond all recently completed our updates to our climate and sustainability plans and happen to have a number of kind of similar priorities and goals and timing for some of the work we want to do. So the 2 projects I'm spotlighting actually involve partnerships with our other East Side cities. So we're working on developing a heat pump campaign to provide outreach and education and incentives for residents to upgrade their heating to an energy efficient heat pump. Also to improve resiliency in their homes, in particular for our vulnerable populations, since heat pumps include air conditioning. And as we all know, we're having hotter and hotter summers, and access to air conditioning is really key for the resiliency, in particular, of our vulnerable populations. We're really trying to focus on how we can support low-income residents and affordable housing properties. So we've been looking to work with Imagine Housing. Imagine Housing has properties in all of our cities, so really trying to get an understanding for where there are opportunities for improving energy efficiency in their properties and other properties, affordable housing properties. And then finally, also looking to likely work with HopeLink to help distribute some of the incentive funds. So that work is still underway, but we're looking at really kind of getting this program started just in the next few months. And then the Community Climate Challenge, this was just launched last week. So again, another partnership with the East Side cities. We have kind of an overarching East Side Climate Challenge, and then Bellevue, we have our own Climate Challenge page. But the intent of this program is really to engage our residents and City of Bellevue employees, so both people who live and work in Bellevue, in taking action to help us achieve our goals. And so it's meant to be more of kind of a fun competition. The website's pretty easy to use, but really is intended to help people understand kind of where they can take action, and then also the numbers kind of roll up into a report for us so we can really see who all is involved and what impact their actions are having. So with that, I will hand it over to Anna to talk a bit about what we've been working on the city operations side.
Yes, thank you, council members and Mayor Robinson, for your attention tonight. I oversee sustainability and municipal operations, and my priority has been to focus on our largest sectors of emissions, which is our transportation and our buildings. So what we've prioritized to have the biggest impact in greenhouse gas reductions is a green fleet strategy that allows us to electrify light-duty fleet vehicles to meet our target of 100% electrification by 2040. So this was largely a data-driven effort. There was a lot of stakeholder engagement to understand operational requirements. We hired a consultant that helped us understand what is available on the market today and where are those opportunities. They also looked at our facilities that house our light-duty vehicles to better understand what requirements are needed in terms of building upgrades for Bellevue Service Center and City Hall. So we completed this strategy in January of this year, and we have implemented this in a phased approach if it moves forward. So what we've looked at is our underutilized vehicles first, and what we should do with vehicles that should not be replaced with EVs, that should be consolidated. Looked at light-duty vehicles and those parking assignments at BSC and City Hall. And we've also looked at opportunities to bridge the gap for our medium to heavy-duty vehicles that do not have a current option, or to transition in the long run to electric vehicles for specialized equipment and vehicles based on that requirement. So an example of this was on the consent agenda tonight. So we were able to reduce our carbon emissions by transitioning to a sweeper that has one engine instead of two engines. So we're really focused on what are the current market opportunities available, how are we going to bridge the gap until there are more market opportunities available to electrify our fleet. But the strategy does put us on track to meet our electrification targets for 2030 and 2040. So a lot of effort has been put into that, and we're proud to move that one forward. The other projects that we've been working on are installing 6 new charging ports at Bellevue Service Center. We have maxed out our electrical capacity at BSC at this point and City Hall, so we're focusing on energy audits and retrofit opportunities to make that facility more efficient. So we have also completed lighting upgrade projects at Bellevue Service Center, and we are submitting grants for the next round of energy efficiency grants through the Department of Commerce. We are also in the process of implementing the previous energy efficiency grant projects that we completed. So that involves an HVAC system replacement at Fire Station 2. So we have ordered equipment for those projects. We have also slated and scheduled our fire station lighting upgrades for 5 different fire stations. So we're still implementing the energy efficiency grant that we received last year. We're preparing to submit future projects for the energy efficiency grant this year. And then we also have solar grants that are coming available in the next 2 months. So we are preparing for site assessments for where those should be sited. We also are working with PSC and their community solar program and looking at opportunities to submit some of our eligible rooftops for that program. And all of this is going to boil down into another PSC rebate program that's called Pay for Performance. So we've found that the result of this work that we currently have underway is going to reduce our emissions by about 290,000 carbon pounds per year. So we're pleased with that. In addition, there will be energy savings that come along with that, and we are reducing electricity as well as gas. So we were able to accomplish quite a bit with the grants that we have in place. We're confident that we can secure future grants for the next round of funding. So we're really just collaborating across departments to submit our eligible fire facilities, our parks facilities, and we're continuing to move forward with our LEED certifications of our newer facilities, including Fire Station 5 and 10, as well as the Resource Management Office that's still under planning efforts at this point. And then just in terms of energy efficiency, we're conducting 17 building audits with Mccullough. We are voluntarily complying with the Clean Buildings Act program. 6 of our properties are required to comply. 3 of our properties are already compliant. And then we're positioning ourselves to go after grant funding to help the buildings that are not compliant to comply. So we really have gone above and beyond to strategically plan for our building facilities and to meet that energy use targets that's being established both in our program as well as with the state's program. And I think I'll turn it back to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Yep, lots of different capital projects going on. It's hard to keep track of them all. So to kind of summarize, it's attached to the agenda memo. We put together the quarterly progress report. I think we've given you kind of some high-level takeaways. That report, includes some other updates on work that's been happening. Again, I think what we really want to try to highlight here is that we are on track with what's in the plan. It's a 5-year plan. We're at the beginning of the 2nd year of the plan, and we've started work or incorporated into ongoing operations. about 75% of the actions. So we do have some actions we need to start work on, but we, when we developed the plan, we tried to look at, okay, what's sort of a good sequencing and phasing of these actions, sort of acknowledging we can't do everything all at once, and some projects are dependent on other projects and that sort of thing. So, there's still more to be done, but we are feeling like we're in a pretty good place. And I think the other thing we want to emphasize is that we really are using the plan to guide our work. It's not just a plan that sits on a shelf that we're not referring to. We're really actively using it to help us prioritize. And, as we look towards the budget process, looking at, okay, what are the actions that we haven't started yet? What do we need to do to get going with those in the next couple years? So just to kind of wrap things up in terms of what's next, I believe Emil mentioned it at our next update to council in July. In the summer is when we normally come back with the greenhouse gas emissions inventory for the previous year. It always takes a little while to kind of get all the data in from PSE and from the PSRC, the Puget Sound Regional Council. So, and then we need some time to kind of take all that information and calculate the greenhouse gas emissions. So we'll be coming back with that, and then information on our other environmental key performance indicators like our recycling rate and that sort of thing. And then really just over the next quarter, kind of continuing work on a lot of the things we talked about today, and then looking to start work on a couple of important projects, the climate vulnerability assessment. That work is getting folded into our comprehensive plan environmental impact statement. So as we move forward with the comprehensive plan update and looking at the impact of different growth scenarios, we'll be taking climate change into account for that. And then the tree regulation code update work is slated to begin in the third quarter. And then the other thing we wanted to highlight is just, we are continually kind of looking for federal and state funding opportunities. With the bipartisan infrastructure law, there's a lot of money that will be coming. There's also some different state funding opportunities. So we did recently submit a request for congressionally designated spending for more funding for the home energy retrofit program, really specifically geared towards affordable housing buildings in Bellevue, and that was actually in partnership with the other East Side cities. And we're also working on a grant for the Washington State Department of Transportation for electric vehicle charging stations that are publicly accessible. So lots we're kind of tracking there and working with other departments to pursue opportunities as they come up. And then, finally, just continuing to really work through our work plan for this year, and then start to think about plans for 23, 24 through the budget process. And that summarizes our presentation for tonight, and we're happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Great presentation, thank you. Are there any comments or questions? Dais? Councilmember Zahn.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation and the update. I think it's always important to keep this as top of mind because climate can't wait for us, and so we need to move as quickly as possible to work on the actions. And I look forward to the July wedge analysis of seeing where we are on this journey and the work that you were doing, because I did talk with staff earlier today about the street sweeper and understanding why right now we couldn't get all the way to an electric sweeper, but were able to reduce it from 2 engines to 1, and you explained that asset is a 7-year cycle, and so in 7 years, we think that we will be there. And I guess my thing would be to just keep that top of mind, so as we're doing purchases in the future for any of our equipment, it would be good to have a sentence about, that sustainability view and whether the market is ready for us to electrify or look at these different alternatives. And so I appreciate that comment. I do think that there's so much interdependency amongst all these different plans and actions that we're taking. So the fact that you've embedded that within the work, I think is really important, in engaging with the community on the climate challenge. I guess I do have a couple of comments, and one is the one that was showing the single-use plastic, and it said it was complete. I'm not sure that at the state level we truly got there with the single-use plastic ban, so I'm wondering if you could take another look at that item and see if we actually are declaring that one a victory, or if there's more work that is needed in that area. And I guess related to that, whether there's some small wins that we could look at pursuing still in these different areas. I heard that the health department is looking at changing some of the rules around refilling of containers that are brought by customers, so we can reduce single use that way. So, I think that all hands are on deck in partnerships there, but I wondered if there's more we can be doing to be on target. And then in the Parks and Open Space Levy, we've started that conversation. So I'm wondering if, as you think about the municipal portion of the plan, are there some things that we could incorporate within the levy for either the capital or operations that would help us to move our fleet even faster for the maintenance of our parks? So, the vehicles that staff are using to maintain, can there be some more that we could potentially be doing there? And then on the funding side, super exciting that we can get at the funding, and I will bring up again that, to take a look before we get into the budget cycle about whether, you guys are amazing. So I really want to center this conversation around the amazing work you're doing. I do wonder what we could even do more if we had a few more staff. So I would like to better understand what are the things we could move even faster if we had more staff, and it would help us potentially to pursue finding partners and funding more broadly. So those were a couple of my comments. Thanks.
Any response to any of that, or do you want to get back to us?
I think with the single-use plastics, we can double check with utilities on that. I did have if I remember correctly, I think the law was passed, and then I think it was put on hold due to COVID, and now I think it has been enacted, but we can double check if there is more to be done on that. I'm not totally remembering offhand, but I know that utilities tracks that really closely.
And I think it's really both the municipal as well. So when we have activities, are we actually giving out single-use water bottles and everything else, as well as the people that are coming into our community?
Yep. I think we definitely try to avoid that. I think with COVID, we kind of, there was some sort of backsliding a bit with having to use more single-use stuff, and now I think we're in a little bit of a transition phase where we, can probably go back to using more, durable materials. But I think with things like that, it's kind of, I think we're at a time where we need to kind of say, okay, are we kind of past some of that single-use materials, and can we go back to kind of what we were doing before?
Thank you. Councilmember Robertson.
To that last end, I think to the extent that we are buying any disposable items for use either internally or on public, with the public, we should be going for the compostable, cornstarch-based utensils if we're having something, and making sure that and we're really good at this, making sure we have out the compost containers and that people know. But that wasn't what I raised my hand to say. But I appreciated council members talking about that. On the tree canopy policy work. Oh, all of a sudden I'm very loud. On the tree canopy policy work, I see that we also have this year a tree canopy assessment. Am I correct to assume that the assessment will predate the actual policy work? I think that would be really good information to have as the policy work's going on.
Yeah, that's the plan. We're kind of waiting for the 2021 data, so that's kind of one question mark. But yeah, I think that timing-wise, it should precede that.
Great. I would also be interested in seeing the trends over time, because I know our tree canopy, I think we were down to 36 or 35% for a while, and it started coming back up. We're at 37 now, from what I know. So it'd be good to understand what the trends have done and maybe the reasons for that. I think the reason for that is because the city's been very aggressive at planting in our parks and open space, maybe some street trees and such, but it'd be good to understand the trends, because I think that will be useful in doing the policy work. Finally, on the light vehicle conversion and the heavy duty vehicles, I know that it's, especially if we have a major disaster the power grid is out for a long period of time. We need to make sure we have vehicles that will work because the city's going to be leaned on very heavily by the residents here to get to them. And I know that that's been one of the consideration on why we only have light duty vehicles on the list. I'm wondering whether there would be, eventually I think the heavy duty vehicles, we may get there and find some sort of system to use should there be a disaster. So that needs to be something we seriously consider before we make that leap to the emergency vehicles, the heavy duty vehicles. But I'm wondering if we could have an interim as we're replacing those vehicles of converting those vehicles to natural gas. Because one of the reasons that the greenhouse gas emissions in the United States have been very flat despite our growing population is because so many fleet vehicles nationwide are converting to natural gas. That's really the main driver for the flattening of the from what I've read, of the greenhouse gas emissions. So to the extent that we could have an interim that would be lower emissions and still get the vehicles where they need to be when they need to be there, I think we should consider that. So that's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to respond?
Yeah, I agree that our fleet vehicles definitely need to be able to respond, and public safety is definitely a consideration. This came up a lot in our stakeholder meetings, which is why we wanted to really understand operations and make sure that we're not impacting our level of service. It was really important to us, as well as integrating this project across our department. We have multiple projects that are impacted by this. So we look at our generator replacement system and our capability, and we're making sure that all of our capacity requirements align. And then to your other point, we do look at global warming potential, which is the carbon intensity of different fuels. And it does make sense to look at the technology that's available until there's a market-ready electric for that heavy duty. So we are tracking that very closely, and we have a lot of information from the consultant about how to bridge that gap until we get to that electrification point. So, but thank you for mentioning that.
I should have assumed that you guys were all over it, but I didn't hear it, so I just thought I'd get my 2 cents, and thank you. I'm so glad that you're looking at that.
Yeah, thank you.
With such a critical perspective. Thanks.
Councilmember Stokes, followed by Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate the reporting. It's great more depth than we've had before, which is, we've had these conversations back and forth, and I think we're making a lot of progress on that, and it's a lot of work to do that, so it is appreciated very much. And I like the comments, the questions that have been asked, and I think it's, we can talk a lot about, should you do it A, B, or C way on these things, and that's helpful to have those conversations. The concern I have is a broader picture in this, and I appreciate and this is just an overview and a kind of report, it's not more detail. But I think for us to really understand where we are and where we are going and how we can get there, we need to have a better grounded picture of, we have a goal, where are we, how did we get there, and what do we have to do to get to the final goal? A lot of the reporting is kind of, well, we're kind of here, we're doing this much, we're doing some work on this, and particularly when you're dealing with and talking to people in the community about this, it's kind of difficult to say something more than, hey, we're doing really good work, we're making some progress on that, and I think it would help us be more supportive and the community more supportive if we can get a little more concrete on what we're doing and where we are and what we need to get to certain places. And you're doing great work, and I think sometimes the conversation with the community gets a little bit sideways because we're not meshing and not getting the information across. And if the information seems kind of, again, like, well, we're making progress, we're 20% here and there, we need to get more detail on that, and I'd like to get a little, some more work on that as well, because I think we're on a good path, and I think we're making a lot of great progress, and I think we can do some things that will make that even go further. And we need to be able to report to people about, we're doing all this work, and we've had all these goals, what have we accomplished? And I think when we do that, people are going to see that and can give us even more input and work with us. So, but again, it's just, it's really good. And I really appreciate the fact that we have these 4 reports every year. It's helped us, I think, in terms of working with the community. And you're doing a great job on it. So thank you.
Yeah, we're looking forward to the July update, so that's when we're going to be reporting back on a lot of these key performance indicators. So kind of everybody should start their calendar for July when we come back for our next report.
Sounds good.
All right,
Thank you.
next we have Deputy Mayor, followed by Councilmember Lee.
Thank you. And I've already circled July on my calendar. I look forward to that update. No, thank you. Just great presentation. Appreciate the update, especially on some of these top-line things that we haven't heard that much about, the heat pump campaign, the community climate challenge, working with other cities, the green fleet, and the energy audits that we're doing for our own city facilities. Would love if you could just touch a moment more on that PSC program and the commercial rooftops. I'd just like to know a little bit more in terms of how they're being identified and exactly what we're doing, how quick we kind of get them online. And then also would like to, and I appreciate the time that the people for climate action took to kind of go through this and provide some feedback in their analysis. Would love to get your perspective on this. I think some things are lost in terms of maybe some assumptions, or there's not the same level of detail that might be already done, but you just haven't explicitly called it out, or that you are working out on it. But would just, I think it'd be great actually for all my colleagues to see that in terms of their feedback and to some of that analysis by this group. And then I just had one suggestion on the, and you had an update on this last quarter about the tree giveaway program, which was successful. And now that it's spring and people are getting outside again and wanted to plant more trees, it seems like a missed opportunity if we don't take advantage of that right now. So I'm wondering if it's possible to work with other groups and look for other ways that we can get more trees in our community. For example, working with the Bellevue Farmers Market, maybe you can pick up more than just, what's for dinner that night or some fresh vegetables. You can pick up a tree you can plant that day as well. But it seems like now would be an opportune time to do that. So I'm not sure that other groups out there exist, but it would seem like it would be a great opportunity right now as people are making their gardens and working on their landscaping again. I think it would be a great opportunity. Or maybe even replacing trees that were knocked down during the winter or during a storm. So I want to make that suggestion. But would love to hear about that PSC program a little bit.
Great, thank you. Yes, this is the second time that we have submitted applications for the PSC Community Solar Program. Last year, it was for larger solar opportunities, and this year it's for smaller. We submitted 5 properties last year. Part of the criteria is the condition of the roof and the lifespan of it. But it is a great program because it fully finances solar. We act as, we basically lease the rooftop space to PSC to install solar. So they pay for the installation and the maintenance of it, and they lease that space back from us to generate community solar projects. So we're looking at some of our roof replacements at, for example, at Fire Station 3 has a brand new roof. So there's some good candidates out there, and it would be a really beneficial program. We're at kind of the engineering phase where we have to evaluate the capacity of those roofs, and it has to be a long-term hold, which works well for us as long-term landholders. So we have submitted some properties for them to evaluate, but the next step is really the engineering analysis if we qualify for their program. But it is a great program, and this is the second phase, and we expect it to continue in the future. So we're excited when we have opportunities to participate in these types of programs.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right, Councilmember Lee.
Thank you.
Did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I can
Go ahead.
respond quickly just to the tree giveaway and the people for climate action comments. So the rhythm that we're starting to get into is that we'll do a city-led tree giveaway in the fall, and then 300 trees. The group interested in planting more trees and preserving trees here, they're focusing more on a spring tree giveaway. So I think I mentioned in the memo, but I probably should have included it in the presentation. The 300 trees had a tree giveaway at the end of March, and so we supported them with that, and they were able to distribute, I think, 1,000 trees. So yeah, overall, really successful, a lot of great engagement. We work closely with them just to kind of, since it is a new program for both of us, just to work through the logistics and all of that. So excited to kind of continue that partnership, and I think probably continue with that sort of rhythm where we do the fall one, which this fall, we're going to kind of integrate with our Arbor Day Festival, so we'll have opportunities for people to come and work in our parks to plant trees, and or get a tree from our tree giveaway, so all part of our big Arbor Day event. So I think that'll be really nice for this year. And going forward too is the plan. And then in terms of the comments from the People for Climate Action, Anna and I got those kind of when you all did, so still kind of going through them. Sure. I think, in general, they sort of represent a desire from the People for Climate Action for us to move faster and do more. There's maybe a couple of comments where, it maybe doesn't kind of have the most up-to-date information in terms of what we're working on and that sort of thing. But, I think we'll kind of continue to work, review those. I think we're also, kind of open for suggestions on, if they have ideas for how we might approach things. I think we would certainly be open to ideas. But yeah, I think kind of, in total, the intent is really to kind of look for how we might kind of move faster with some of the different actions.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Environment is nothing new, and living in harmony, human being living in harmony and balance with the environment is nothing new, right? We've always wanted to do that, but way back sometime, before, it seems to be an abstract idea because it's not really impacting us that much. But it's getting to be more and more reality, more realistic. We are seeing the climate change, the impact, the severity of the climate. So I think it's becoming more and more something that we need to be concerned with. So you can tell by hearing from the community, from young to old, and everybody in between. So I'm really happy to see that we are turning the abstract into something that we're actually coming up with programs. We actually can make some concrete actions that can make some difference in what we are feeling. I think this has to be something that's why I'm glad to see that you are doing this. You're doing studies fine, but we can do more. I'm sure we can, because it's a catch-up situation, and the nature is happening, and we got to be sure that we keep up with it, at least attempt to, and it's going to take some time. So I'm glad that you're talking about the solar energy, PSC. I want to relate my experience. I was traveling in Taiwan once. I traveled around the island on a bus tour. And there are many homes, residential houses you see from the freeway. And every house has a solar panel, has a solar heated water tank. So how much energy do you think they save, right? So it's not necessarily, how we may want to live the way we do, but we can learn from various countries. I mean, I'm sure including, countries in Europe. What can we adapt that would fit into our way of life here in the United States, in Bellevue, that we will also get the benefit of what we're talking about, saving energy and saving environment, reducing emission, all that stuff. So I'm glad that we can, even in Bellevue, I remember 10 years ago, we have gone through solar panel programs. We've gone through various ideas, but they didn't go very far. I think that's the key we need to be working on this time. Not just try it once and it doesn't work, and try, then give up on that, because we may lose interest. So I believe that if we put our mind to it and really adopt something that people can accept, and if we educate the community, it's a good thing. And the things you just mentioned, number of them, I really like the idea. Electric vehicle, charging station, we know it's going to work. We know empirically and realistically it's going to work. So why don't we try to do some of that? Because we need to use that to educate our people, our folks, and let them see if actually it's something that we can adopt. Then we can move forward. So I'm really glad that, we're going to see something in July. So this is a really good beginning. So keep up the good work, and we need to do something that show people that it actually can work and we can accept it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Okay, Councilmember Barksdale and then me.
All right, thank you, Mayor. I just also want to say thank you for the work that you're doing on the environmental stewardship plan and to implement the items. I guess I was curious about the, when July comes around and we get the results in terms of the greenhouse gas emissions, are we going to sort of review the plan to see how we might sort things around to make more progress? And then when it comes to the budget, I guess, building on Councilmember Zahn's point, if it's possible, we'd love to see maybe a couple of scenarios, like if you were at this level of staffing, you'd be able to do get these things achieved versus this level of staffing.
Yeah, so for the greenhouse gas emissions inventory, our thinking is kind of regardless of sort of where the emissions might be trending, the actions we have in the plan, we intend to kind of continue with. So the emissions kind of, as we've seen the past couple of years with COVID, there's been some pretty significant changes just with people working from home more and, people driving to work less, that sort of thing. So there's quite a few factors in there that are out of our control. So while it is a really useful tool, it's not necessarily a tool that cities use to, adjust their work from year to year. The general buckets of, we know that about 40% of our emissions comes from transportation and about 50% from our buildings. That generally stays about the same. So we kind of know where our priority areas are, and that really won't change. But, I think in particular as we, in a couple years get ready to update the plan and all of that, then I think, we can see sort of where the trends are and then, if there are some bigger changes we might want to make in priorities. So yeah, I think but I think we can look at the data and see how things have changed. I think it will be interesting for 2021. It was another, more or less anomaly year with people mostly working from home and that sort of thing. So I think the inventory just over the next couple years is going to be interesting as people kind of transition back into the workplace and maybe kind of new patterns emerge in terms of how people are working in more of a hybrid environment and that sort of thing, and what impact that has on our transportation emissions, et cetera. And then, yeah, for the budget, I think we can circle back and look at what some options might be. Yep.
So it sounds like we're going to review the plan in a couple of years, though, like before 2025, to reprioritize, to make sure I guess I'm just thinking like, sort of like a retro for at least the years that have gone by, so then we could move things around to have more impact.
Yeah, I think we haven't decided yet when we would really begin the plan update. The plan, spans from 21 through 2025. We could potentially start, in early 25 or so, for example. It'll depend a little bit on what all we're able to get done in 2023 and 24 in terms of when we're, ready to start it. I think with the comprehensive plan being adopted in middle of 2024. I don't think we would really want to start before that because I think, that comprehensive plan update will kind of take into account climate change, and there could be some new policy direction in there that we would want to look at for the environmental stewardship plan update. So yeah, I think somewhere in that kind of late 2024, 25, early 25 timeframe, we would want to start looking at updating it, but we haven't quite figured out.
But one of the reasons we chose a 5-year action plan was so that we would have this opportunity to reevaluate. Some cities do 20-year plans and don't really come back. So we recognize what you're saying and that we want to evolve with the process and the opportunities. And that's why we thought the 5-year increment made the most sense for the city of Bellevue.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. So I really like that you're collaborating with other cities. I read somewhere recently, they said the most impactful thing you can do is do the same thing, all the cities in the region be working on the same things. That collaboration, I think, is really important. I had two asks. One is, Silver Glen is a affordable senior independent community in Bellevue, and I'm wondering if you could look at their older buildings for these heat pumps. They do not have air conditioning there. And then, can you make it really clear how a resident can sign up to join the climate challenge?
Oh, sure. Yeah, it is online, but so you can go to BellevueClimateChallenge.org and then just click the join button, and then you just enter in your name, email address, I think a couple other points of information, not too much information, and then you're good to go.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
Yes.
Can I ask a question because of Councilmember Barksdale's question?
Okay.
Because I think I was a little confused. I thought that in July, when we got the wedge analysis to see how we were doing, that was the time for us to do some recalibration and figure out what we need to move faster. But what I'm hearing is that really the last couple of years have been an anomaly, so that may not be the time or that space. So I am concerned about our ability to move fast enough. I mean, I heard all the colleagues talk about how we move faster and do more. So I would really double down on in July, please come back with options for budget. If we had more people, what could we accomplish? And the other one that I brought up earlier that we didn't really talk about is that I believe the end of July was when we were going to be considering the Parks and Open Space levy. And because the parks and the facilities are owned by the city, the operating costs, the capital costs are going to be part of that. It's for 20 years. So if we need to, in order to accelerate the climate actions that we're doing, that we need to look at what's in that levy and how we move faster with some of the, electrifying our fleet or the buildings and getting them solar or whatever else that might be. I'd like to make sure that we don't lose that opportunity because it is a 20-year levy that we're looking at. So we didn't specifically have a conversation about that comment I made, so I do want to understand what you can bring back in that time so we don't lose the window.
Councilmember Zahn, could you please clarify when you're asking about the speed of the implementation? Are you asking to see if we brought in more staff, if we could speed up the implementation of our 5-year program?
Yes, that is what I'm asking, because actually there was one category, I think it was strategy E1, improved performance of new construction, where all of them said not yet started. And so it seems like if we are looking at our 5-year plan and we're already in year number 2, that all of those actions should be started in some way. So and again, I want to just reinforce that you're doing amazing work, and I so appreciate that. I also recognize that, right, more hands make more work easier to be accomplished. So having that conversation and making sure that we don't lose those opportunities to increase staffing will be important.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, we're going to take a break. We will come back at 10 till. Our next study session item, Mr. Miyake, would you like to introduce?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and council members. The next topic is with respect to the Wilburton visioning implementation with respect to the comprehensive plan and land use code amendment. And this is where we are seeking direction from the council to initiate the process. By way of background, a high priority of the council as well as the committee has been to initiate the Wilburton comp plan and land use code process and to unlock the growth potential in this unique area of the city. The good news is the visioning work for Wilburton has been completed by way of the council-appointed Wilburton Citizen Advisory Committee, in which Councilmember Barksdale co-led. So the process in front of you this evening has been designed to advance this work quickly, while at the same time meet the legal requirements in advancing the council's priorities priorities, including making significant progress in the area of generating more housing, both affordable and workforce. So with this in mind, joining us this evening is Mike Hotterman, Director, Neil King, Assistant Director for in the planning area, and Janet Schull, Strategic Planning Manager, all from the Community Development Department, and Tristan Tanis, the Consulting Attorney for Development Services. With that, I'm just going to go ahead and turn it over to Neil to kick off the presentation.
Thank you for the introduction, City Manager Miyake, and good evening again, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and members of Council. Staff from Community Development and Development Services are very excited to be here tonight to launch the Wilburton Vision implementation. We do have one relatively new staff here tonight. Janet Schull has been with the city about 9 months or so. This is her first presentation to Council. She is the Strategic Planning Manager. That was my old job, and I know having worked with her for the past 9 months, she's ready to go, and she'll be the project manager for the Wilburton work moving forward. I'm going to go ahead and advance that one. There we go. So tonight, staff are seeking council direction to launch a comprehensive plan amendment and a land use code amendment to implement the Wilburton Vision. This body of work was included in staff's overall 2022-2023 planning work plan that was proposed to council on March 21st. And tonight, we're presenting the details for that formal launch. We're really eager to get this moving and begin the work on the Wilburton implementation. The agenda we've compiled for tonight includes a review of the importance of this work and how it fits with other city planning efforts. We'll cover a bit on the background of previous Wilburton work in the planning context. There's also a range of objectives, opportunities, and priorities that we'll touch upon tonight. And then we'll move onto the overall scope and timeline and highlight some of the community engagement efforts. And finally, the next steps once the launch occurs. We want to spend a bit of time talking about the importance of the Wilburton effort. It's important to set the stage a bit about where Wilburton sits in the bigger picture. Wilburton is a huge opportunity in the city to create a new urban neighborhood. The CAC work that was completed in 2018 creates a great foundation for actually bringing forward a new neighborhood here. As was noted in the written materials and some of the public comments, this is going to be a very walkable area. It's going to be accessible to 4 light rail stations opening in about a year or so. And it's also going to be served by what we feel is going to be the premier pedestrian and bicycle facility on the east side in the East Rail. And as was also noted, it's going to be part of the Grand Connection as it extends over into Wilburton. There's also been a tremendous amount of changes occurring in the city and growth in the office sector in particular. And as we look ahead, we think it's important to really look at Wilburton in the context of the greater city needs. So Wilburton does provide, as you'll hear tonight, a big opportunity to help balance out our job and housing growth, add more capacity to the city, and also create some additional housing choice in the Wilburton area. You're also going to hear tonight about the synergies gained by thinking about how Wilburton grows and the overall growth strategy through the comprehensive plan periodic update that was just launched by council back in February. The proposed approach is also going to build upon some of the emerging needs and planning issues, such as incorporating the mobility implementation plan that was just adopted recently, the East Rail framework plan that city staff and King County staff have been working on over the past year or so, and also helping to accommodate some of our housing targets as well as some of the Grand Connection planning. So included in your packet and what you're going to see tonight is a very aggressive schedule. It puts forward our best approach for delivering the policy and the code for the whole Wilburton area. It also includes the predictability and coordination that are needed to deliver on the scope that we have in front of you. This is going to start the re-engagement with the stakeholders and community immediately. So when we get into the next steps, you're going to see events that are starting literally next week in this implementation. And it's also going to deliver the overall comp plan update for Wilburton in advance of our major plan update. So we are proposing to actually have the Wilburton policy adopted in advance of the overall comp plan policy for the city. In the broader spectrum of things, we are delivering a significant amount of work in a 2-year period. So if you think of between now and mid-2024, from the policy to the environmental work and the code, that's a significant amount of work. Our commitment from staff is making sure that we get all that work done on the schedule that we're bringing forward to you tonight. A little bit of background and context. The Wilburton area is the last of our planning areas within our transit growth corridor. It covers about 300 acres and is largely a commercial area right now. The vision, as you see in this graphic, is really for a sustainable, equitable, mixed-use neighborhood. Shown on the right is the graphic representation straight out of the advisory committee's vision from 2018. We feel that that recommended vision is a good starting place to move forward with our work. Wilburton does look west over to downtown, as you can see. It also is walking distance to the new East Main area that you recently adopted the code for, and it really is going to bridge that gap between downtown East Main and the Bellred area as well. So it's a key piece to our overall growth corridor there. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Trisna and then Janet, and they're going to continue with our presentation.
Great. Thank you, Emil. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council members. So in addition to where Wilburton is located in its physical surroundings, Wilburton is a big, as Emil mentioned, important piece within the larger planning context. We have seen tremendous changes in growth in the past handful of years, and we know more changes ahead, given the continued growth in jobs as well as our population. So as you can see in this timeline, these changes have occurred since the 2015 guiding principles for Wilburton was adopted, and then the 2018 draft environmental impact statement was completed. We have also seen, as Emil mentioned, the East Main Code amendments that was adopted just late last year. And earlier this year, we have the ratification of countywide planning policies, jobs and housing growth targets, and the adoption of the mobility implementation plan. So this launch of Wilburton is on the heels of the city's initiation of the comprehensive plan periodic update as well. This is a multi-year planning effort required by the Growth Management Act, and this sets the framework of how we grow and how we maintain our quality of life at the very same time. Wilburton will be able to incorporate the East Rail framework plan, anticipated to be completed soon, as you see in this timeline. And then I know we'll talk about this a bit more in the presentation, but we anticipate to be able to complete the Wilburton CPA in 2023, and then the LUCA just following after the comprehensive plan periodic update is adopted in 2024. There are 3 primary components of the Wilburton Vision implementation effort. The first is the Comprehensive Plan Amendment, or CPA. This will update the Wilburton Northeast 8th Street sub-area plan and a portion of the Bellred plan, and include the vision for Wilburton, as well as the policies to support this vision. The second is the Land Use Code Amendment, or LUCA. The LUCA sets the standards for development and the uses that would be permitted, how big and how tall buildings may be, and what public amenities there would be, and the design guidelines for developments. The LUCA are the implementing regulations for that vision and policies that have been set by the CPA. The third piece is the legislative rezone, and this creates new land use districts for the Wilburton area, and to be consistent with the new comprehensive plan designations just adopted by the CPA. We're, as Emil noted, we're eager to charge ahead and start work on the Wilburton project. And launching Wilburton at this time, and in working through the CPA, the LUCA, as well as the rezone, present great opportunities. We will go through later in this presentation, but we are planning to coordinate the Wilburton environmental work with the citywide comprehensive plan periodic update environmental analysis. There are staff and resource efficiencies that are gained by doing this in this coordinated manner. And it's also an opportunity to look at things holistically and look at the big picture of the city's vision. We are committed to moving Wilburton forward as expeditiously as possible. But we are also certainly open to hear ideas about how we can be more efficient or nimble. We see an improved understanding and communication with the broader community. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the Wilburton, the East Rail Framework Plan is almost complete, and we are able to incorporate this as part of the CPA and the LUCA. Wilburton, maybe the most important piece is really an opportunity to increase housing in the city and housing capacity, as well as it includes a number of critical pieces, such as some opportunity to create a new, sustainable, and equitable community and neighborhood. So for this project, there are also key priorities that we would be considering and advancing. As I mentioned earlier, Wilburton has a role in the city's compliance with the Growth Management Act because it will add housing capacity and choice towards meeting the city's housing growth targets. So much is going on with the city right now, and the Wilburton corridor will see tremendous changes, particularly in multimodal connections via Eastlink, East Rail, extensions to the mountains, the Sound Greenway, and more. So Wilburton will be a part of the city's diverse and connected neighborhoods, prioritizing connectivity within and to and from the area. The connectivity includes Northeast 6th Street extension and the Grand Connection, which will connect downtown to Wilburton. Wilburton will also consider its place in the city in the park, where there are open and inclusive community spaces. It will prioritize sustainability and equity, and with enhanced natural systems, sustainable transportation, great economic opportunities, including mom and pop shops and neighborhoods that is a welcoming and inclusive community. So as I mentioned earlier, we plan to conduct the environmental review for Wilburton with that of the comprehensive plan periodic update. This environmental review will be done through an environmental impact statement and will assess probable adverse environmental impacts from the proposed changes. Will be in land use and housing, transportation and traffic, aesthetics, public services and infrastructure and utilities, as well as the environment, including air, water, and geology. We expect that land use updates can take multiple years, and we want to shepherd the work to move quickly, but not at the expense of missing big picture opportunities. So we want to be able to gain the efficiencies and synergy that Emil also spoke of earlier. There's just been a lot of changes since the draft environmental impact statement for Wilburton was done in 2018. Significant office development in the city's growth corridor, and new housing targets which exceed the city's capacity. So we also need to look at growth forecasts for 2044, not 2035. And as noted earlier, we have seen a lot of changes in the transportation sector. So we want to be able to take advantage of these transportation changes, so including the multi-mobility implementation plan that was just adopted, as well as the East Rail Framework Plan. And with these significant changes, we plan it makes the most sense to do the environmental work for Wilburton at the same time that we are doing the comprehensive plan periodic update work. So we know this work is also very important, and we're excited to work with stakeholders and community members to this effort. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Janet to go through the remaining of our presentation.
Great. Thank you, Trisna. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and members of the council, it's a pleasure to be here this evening. I feel very fortunate to be able to make this presentation to you in person, or be part of this presentation. So I will be going over in a little more detail our proposed scope and timeline for the work ahead. And this image you have in front of you is the overall timeline for Wilburton, and we have organized it and would like to present it with a little bit of context. So what you see here running through the middle of the timeline in the blue line is representing the work of the Wilburton vision implementation. And then up above that, we have traveling along the context for which we are doing the Wilburton work. And that starts with a look back a bit to the comprehensive plan launch that occurred in February. And then we mark on here the completion of the East Rail Framework Plan, which is anticipated to be in Q2 of this year. And then also reference the work that is being done in the Transportation Department, most recently the Mobility Implementation Plan that was just adopted, and then the work that's underway on the concurrency, multimodal concurrency ordinance work, and the TFP work that is also going to be completed in this year and will also be very informative to our work on the Wilburton vision implementation and the environmental analysis in particular. So the work has been organized into 3 phases that are represented by the colors you see here on the timeline. The first phase in green being the re-engagement phase, which we would embark on upon receiving your direction to proceed. And that would be overlapping with the second phase, which is the future land use and policy development phase. And that is indicated by the yellow you see on the timeline. And that work is very much in alignment with the work that is being done on the periodic comprehensive plan update. And you'll see there encircled the milestones with the environmental analysis work, the scoping, and then the draft environmental impact statement and the final environmental impact statement. And that's very intentional that we've organized the work so that we can be doing the Wilburton analysis in the context of the citywide analysis. And that way we're providing the best indication of how Wilburton will address and be able to respond to our future growth targets, and also doing that within the context of the citywide perspective. So that is the second phase. And then overlapping with that is the third phase, or the LUCA phase of the work plan, and that will commence before we are complete with the second phase, so that again, we're looking for the absolute best case scenarios we can come up with for efficiencies in staff resourcing and communication among our staff team members. So we would be commencing that phase, the LUCA phase, in 2023, and then that would be carried out to the LUCA adoption that again would be right on the heels of the periodic comprehensive plan update. And then, as Trisna noted before, we will be adopting the Wilburton CPA in 2023, so that will occur before the periodic comprehensive plan CPA is adopted. So we just thought it was important to lay out the Wilburton work as it is within the context of the citywide effort. We know in the earlier work that was done in 2018 with the draft environmental impact statement, there was a lot of community interest in knowing more about how Wilburton was, the future state of Wilburton would potentially impact neighborhoods beyond the Wilburton area. So we think this is the best way to inform community about that and to make sure that we are doing the best analysis of how Wilburton fits into our future effort. So as was noted before, we see efficiencies here in moving multiple major initiatives forward simultaneously. We'll be able to complete the needed policy direction for not only Wilburton, but also for the Bell Red area, as there is a bit of an overlap of the Wilburton study area with portion of the Bell Red sub-area. So we'll be able to do that within the context of the comprehensive plan periodic update. And then, as also has been mentioned, we have the best ability to integrate our planning for new housing and growth targets with this timeline and scope proposal. And then we'll be able to align the environmental review to best ready the city for future development. So with this slide, I would just like to talk a little bit about our community engagement portion of our work plan. And this image is just representing how our community engagement work will be aligning with each of the 3 phases we just outlined in that scope and timeline illustration. So again, beginning with the community re-engagement phase, which would commence upon launch and direction to proceed and would go through the fall. We would be working with the community to make sure everyone is aware of the Wilburton vision, because we recognize that not everyone was here in 2018 and might know of the effort and the good work that was done by the Citizens Advisory Committee. So we want to make sure people are aware of that. We are calendaring meetings with our commissions, Planning Commission and Transportation Commission in particular, to make sure all those appointed officials are aware of the history of the work and the work that we'll be moving forward. And then in addition, we are also calendaring events with our known stakeholders who are very interested in partnering with us and working with us as we move forward. as well as expanding our reach to the broader community and also building upon the recent engagement work that was done with the East Rail Framework Plan. Just this past summer, we had a lot of good engagement with members of the Wilburton area who are also very much interested in East Rail. So in the second phase of our work, we will be doing a lot of engagement centered around the EIS process, utilizing those public comment periods for that, and also aligning our engagement activities very closely with the comprehensive plan, land use alternatives development. So again, community is understanding and able to participate in the vision for Wilburton and seeing how it relates to the overall city vision and our priorities. And then finally, the third phase, which is the LUCA phase, the community input will be largely about working with us, excuse me, about, I'm almost done, so I think I'll make it. The last phase, the LUCA phase, is getting community engaged with understanding of how the guidelines and development standards will inform the future development, and they'll have the opportunity to envision that along with us. And then most importantly, we do intend to have a test run application of our LUCA with stakeholders. That's something we typically do when we are implementing major changes to our development standards and design guidelines, as we like to kind of ground truth those and test those out with stakeholders. So that will be the focus of that third phase. So with that, just want to highlight a little bit of the next steps. So this first phase of engagement in particular, as I mentioned, we'll be scheduling project launch briefings with our commissions, updating and expanding our stakeholder and interested party list, knowing that there are still people out there who might want to know about this and get involved going forward. Outreach with interested parties regarding project launch, as was mentioned, and then also identifying our equity outcomes to be considered in policy development. That is something we've built into our work plan and would be doing in our initial stages of the work. And then finally, affirming the vision and aligning it with our citywide goals and policies to make sure we're starting out in the best possible place for the work ahead. So with that, I just would like to conclude by reiterating what Emil and Trisna have said. We're very eager and enthusiastic about proceeding with this work. We look forward to hearing from you and your direction this evening, your input, and also are happy to answer any questions you might have about the work ahead. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you for the presentation. Councilmember Stokes, as former mayor, I know that you appointed Councilmember Barksdale to the CAC, but I'm going to start with him because he did the work. Councilmember Barksdale, go ahead and start.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Just really excited about moving this forward and enjoyed the time that I spent with the CAC and talking with the property owners too, and all the collaboration that went into coming up with the vision for Wilburton. And also many thanks to staff for their creative approach to engaging the conversation or facilitating the conversation. There were a lot of innovative parts to it that I appreciated and the seats. So as you've already heard, there's that confluence of the different modes of transportation that creates that opportunity for everyone to come together, whether you're walking, biking, or get there any other way, light rail. It's that space where we really thought initially about who would benefit from this space, who might not currently have a place in Bellevue right now. And that's how we got to the young professionals and entrepreneurs. And also, at least at the time, 20 people aged 20 to 39 made up the majority of Wilburton at the time as well. So what you see there is really meant to be sort of a vibrant area. When you see like alleys with addresses, you see the mom and pop shops, the festival streets, the range of day and night activities, and the other aspects of it really are meant to sort of allow for that activation and engagement, and which fosters that inclusive environment because people are making connections and experiencing that sense of belonging. And the other piece here too was it really promotes that active lifestyle and the cultural amenities, cultural spaces. So I would just say that I'm really excited about it. I think it's an opportunity to really create a space that people can really engage and connect, especially as we're getting back together after the pandemic. So I'm really excited about what this can be, and of course I support proceeding with this implementation.
Thank you. Any other, Deputy Mayor, did you have a hand up?
Sure, I did. I wasn't sure if you want to go to Councilmember Stokes first before coming to me, but I'm happy to go.
We'll jump around.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Appreciate the work, Councilman Barksdale, that you did on the CAC and everyone that was on the CAC, and thank you, staff, for the great presentation tonight. And obviously, am happy to continue to move this forward. Although it gives me a little bit of heartburn moving forward here, as you know, it's the East Main that we just recently completed is top of mind for me, which was a 7-year process. We're 6 years into this, and at least 2 more years before we get to a point where we've updated the LUCA here. So it's a little bit concerning for me that's taking this long, and the reason is just primarily the opportunity cost. You know, we're constantly being bombarded, all of us, about, are we ready for the growth? The growth is coming. I can only imagine if we could only have completed East Main, if we can only complete this quicker, how many affordable units, workforce housing units could have been created? How much more of a head start we could have had on multimodal infrastructure. So that's top of mind for me. I know there's a lot of considerations in terms of how we move forward with this. And I've heard multiple times tonight about how much things have changed in 4 years, and I would really appreciate staff to elaborate a little bit on that, because from my perspective, certain things have changed, but I think those changes are known, not necessarily unknown. So I'd like to expand on that a little bit. And again, that opportunity cost, and another question that I have is one of the emails that we received about a DA that the city received at the city's urging, is my understanding, but we did not move forward with that DA. I'd like to understand why. It might be we wanted to finish this process first, but then why request the DA? But in that DA, my understanding, there's some opportunities, getting back to the opportunity cost here, that could help build some infrastructure, and that opportunity might go away if we don't move on it quickly. I'm not sure if that's the case or not, but I'd certainly like to get staff's perspective on that. Again, not only on the multimodal, but also on the housing perspective. And then really want to ask, is it possible that we can cut this down from 2 years to a year and a half, or maybe even if we're really aggressive, to a year? Or if we can't do that, is it possible that we could accelerate some aspects of this? Again, and I'm harping on 2 things here. Would we be able to move a little bit quicker in terms of density and affordable housing, not at the cost of any incentives that we could use and encourage developers to explore? And then also on the multimodal piece. Again, referring to that DA, my understanding there's a plan there to create a bridge over 405. That's something that this city plans to do as part of our grand connection. Why not take advantage of that now while we can? Certainly there should be, and it's somewhat around, we're talking about the urgency around the environment, as we should, but there should be urgency around this as well, which I've heard many times, and I know this is urgent to all of staff, so I appreciate that. I'm just finding a way here that we're just not losing out on opportunities to address this growth, because the growth is already here, it's coming, and to a certain extent, we're behind on certain aspects. And whenever I hear someone who wants to be a Bellevue resident, but they can't be, or they were a Bellevue resident but can no longer be in Bellevue, I'm constantly thinking about these opportunities that we may have missed because we weren't able to move quick enough. So I'll stop there with some of those questions, but those are some of the top of mind things for me too. Oh, and then just one more. With East Main, we started as a baseline as the downtown code. I'm wondering if you're looking at that in terms of what's the baseline for Wilburton, if there is even one at this point.
I'll go ahead and maybe facilitate the answers, and then you'll hear from a
Sure,
number
I
of different
appreciate it.
people. Mayor, if that's okay to just go into responses now?
Please.
Okay. It's interesting to think about what has changed since 2018. So we did, briefly pinpoint a few things, but we can maybe have a discussion or elaborate on those as needed. I think one of the key things is the significant amount of office growth that we have seen. Just if you think
Sure.
back to when that was wrapping up in 2018, we hadn't had the strong interest yet in force from Amazon. So Amazon and the other developers building for the Amazon Corporation coming to Bellevue, that is a significant new thing that did happen between the end of the CAC report and now. It's a good thing for the city that we're getting that job growth. It's helping to meet our job targets, but it did, in some ways, throw out of balance even the job and housing production during that window there. So we're expecting, by some estimates, 25 to 30,000 jobs just over the next 4 or 5 years. And if you look around downtown, especially, a lot of cranes building office towers. Also during that time, the housing production just has not kept up with even our targets in the plan. So as we look at our previous growth targets, we weren't meeting those. And we do recently had the King County and our city ratification of new targets that are even much higher than our previous target. So the increased number of housing units that we do need to plan for in the city is a significant difference. In rough numbers, we need to create at least 9 to 10,000 more housing unit capacity in the city just to meet our growth targets. And Wilburton is a big part of that.
Yep.
So that's a big difference. We did know about East Trail clearly. Some of the funding and the importance of East Trail as a key amenity there and making sure that it actually happens sooner rather than later, that has accelerated. So we're working with King County and Sound Transit and the East Trail partners on getting East Trail developed and that key amenity. So some of the thinking about the importance of having businesses and residents open up to East Trail, where right now all the buildings, their backs are against East Trail, frankly. So how do we have that trail-oriented development? And that has evolved, I think, over the past few years as far as the best practice and thinking on it. How we think about transportation and the impacts of transportation, the draft EIS that was done for Wilburton looked out to 2035. So it had looked out roughly, it was about a 19-year or so period. Now that we're in 2022, we do need to extend that horizon year out. So that is a key difference about how we do the best practice of transportation modeling. 2035 is not a sufficient horizon year knowing what we know now. So we are wanting to push that out to a 2044 horizon year and incorporate our new growth targets that we have in there from an analysis standpoint. And embedded in that is really I'm gonna say the new way of thinking about mobility and how we analyze mobility and thinking about all the different modes. And I think a number of you rattled off the modes, biking, walking, light rail. Clearly, there's still gonna be parking and cars that use that area. But it's how we even think about how we plan an area from a mobility standpoint. And I think we're gonna do things in a smarter way, clearly moving forward with the mobility implementation plan than we had previously 4 years ago. And I think the other one is just affordable housing. It is grown to be, that and transportation. Those are the top 2 issues that we have. So the importance of affordable housing and creating new typologies, I'm gonna say it is more important now than it was 4 years ago.
Absolutely. I think you're building my case for me, though, Emil.
Okay.
But thank you.
Yeah, so that was one portion there. As far as the timeline that we've set out, that is what we feel is the most efficient timeline to deliver the code for the overall Wilburton area and do the correct environmental analysis and planning in light of the overall comprehensive plan update that we just launched. So we do think it is, our best proposal. It's a very aggressive proposal. It is a lot of work over a 2-year period. clearly, we look at any efficiencies that we can have even once we launch something. We are, for things like EISs and other work, we do hire consultants, but we're even experimenting with some consultants that are essentially doing staff work as well. So that's something that we are learning as we go along, and if we can hire a consultant to kind of do the staff work and with the correct guidance, we're up for it. So we are looking for efficiencies in all our work, because we want to get this thing planned and development happening there. Just, we're urgent to do that as well. As far as the housing ideas, housing is an interesting one because there's very few people who live there out in that area, as you know, and as we talk more about housing options and in light of the periodic plan update and the new right work for affordable housing, we are keeping that in our mind about housing opportunities as well. So maybe we can be thinking about that or report back once this is launched on the specific housing opportunities, because that's that big opportunity there. And then I'll probably close with my statements and hand it off to Tristan and others to weigh in. Our interest and ability to continue to work with stakeholders is as strong now as ever. We want to continue to work on the bridge idea for the Grand Connection, that early catalyst. We want to think about the district energy idea and the heat recovery. We've met with King County last week and kind of got up to date on their process for that. So as far as the sorting out some of these issues, working with stakeholders, we're on board to do that. And, we've been doing it already and continuing that work as well. Tristan, why don't we talk a bit about the DA and how that works in an area like Wilburton and some of the upfront work that is needed to even accept a DA in Wilburton?
Yeah, absolutely. So Deputy Mayor Neuenhuis, you obviously saw that letter suggesting a four-step process, essentially, to be able to allow for a DA, to allow development to take place. I think we need to first look at that. As Emile mentioned, we're always looking to gain any efficiency that we can. To the extent that there is a good idea out there, we're happy to look at it to see whether that would work and whether or not that could, in fact, accomplish the housing and affordable housing more sooner in time than having to go through the entire CPA and LUCA process. However, I don't have an answer at this point in terms of being able to commit one way or the other, but other than to say that we will commit to look at anything that would gain us efficiency in the course of this effort. So, and then your other question in terms of baseline, whether or not there is something, a code that we can look at or certain policies that we can look at that could be the baseline, and we can use that as a starting point potentially. Certainly that's something that, Emile and his team and Janet would be able to look at in the policy standpoint. We can certainly do that on the LUCA standpoint, but I think it's still early maybe at this point in time, but certainly something that we're happy to consider and do if it makes sense to implement the vision.
I have two follow-ups. Can I ask them now, or should I wait, Mayor? I'm happy to wait.
Let's wait.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Stokes.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. This is really exciting. I think back to historically, Wilburton is named for Wilbur Lumber Company. I'm a big rail fan of lumber. And that part of it is, and the interesting thing about it, and going from a logging thing to this, what we're planning, is fantastic. One of the things I have to keep in mind, and I'm going to get to more substantive things, is that there is a part of Wilburton that's kind of confusing because I live in Woodridge, right close to Wilburton, and there is another Wilburton, in a sense. I mean, there are a lot of houses over there and all that area. But we're talking about, and I think as we talk to the public, we want to make sure that people in the neighborhood now, the long established neighborhood in there, is not thinking that this is going to impact them. So we had, be real clear on that. This other part of Wilburton is just a fantastic opportunity, particularly in connection with what's going on already, even though we haven't gotten into it in a sense in Bel Red. I mean, the development out there is just really going. So this is a great, tremendously opportunity for us. On the timing, and I appreciate the Deputy Mayor's comments, I think we all agree that, it's, we should never, and we've had these conversations, we should never take 5 years, 10 years, 7 years to do something. but we do it all the time. And I think we're at a point where the city, where the staff and council are saying, we're not in Kansas anymore. You know, this isn't 2017, this isn't 2012. This is 2022 in a new world and opportunity. And I really appreciate what you've set out. I think it's a fantastic plan. And I understand and appreciate what the deputy mayor is saying, and I don't think there's a real conflict there. The fact of the matter is, we're talking about doing something this tremendous and putting this plan in place in less than 2 years. I mean, we've already got 4 years gone. By the time you get started, it's next month, and then it'll be 2023 and 24. We're looking to go forward. And I've never seen a plan put together and a whole comprehensive piece so well and so connected, and with all of the pieces that are going to have to take place being put in place. So I think we can actually achieve what we're all talking about, what you laid out, and be not that far off, or even achieve what the deputy mayor is suggesting. So I think we have some flexibility. But the last thing we want to do, though, is get bogged down in one particular project and maybe not have a repeat like East Main, but that's kind of, you know, the history's there. I mean, it took us 7, and a lot of that had to do with process. Most of it was all process. We could have done that a long time ago. We have to put that behind us. And had we done something 5 years ago in East Main, it would be a total different project. So I think in the long run, it's okay. But my point is, I think you have a really great plan put in place. There's nothing that I've seen that could not be done within that context. And working together in the context of the rest of the part would be, could have this stuff done. And you're also expressing a great opportunity and a desire to be flexible. And so I think we can accomplish some of these requests to do something now, but I just don't want us to go down a kind of a rabbit hole and get stuck in something there that takes up a lot of time. And I think we can stick to the year and 2/3 to get this done. If we do that, I think we'd get a gold star from any development association or anything. So I just think we go forward. Let's don't get bogged down with trying to, because once you have somebody wanting to kind of do something now, you'll have other people and all. Let's put it together. You've got a good plan. Take in mind you have somebody ready to go. See how we can work that through and move forward. I think it's fantastic. And as I said, taking so long is something we've been doing for a long time, and I think we can make that better. And I also appreciate the detail, and you're coming back and talking to the staff and talking to the council about the specifics on this. And I hope we're going to have a great conversation all through this period. The other exciting thing is something we've been working on for a long time, talk about taking for a long time. It came back from Denver in 2012 and said, let's finish the Grand Connection and go it across. Well, I think it's not 2012 anymore. And the East Rail is just amazing. So all these pieces have come together. And I think you put it together, let's get the whole piece working and get it done and really see if we can do it in 2024 and not get bogged down by kind of veering off on something. And I appreciate the fact that we have people who want to go forward now, and I think we can accommodate that in a way that's timely and we'll actually have a better project. Okay. That's the way I feel about it. I think I'm really, really excited about this and ready to go on it.
Thank you. Councilmember Robertson, followed by Councilmember Zahn.
Thank you. Welcome back, Mike. Happy to have you back in Bellevue. And as I was reflecting on all the years we worked together, I remember your great ability to meet deadlines. And that makes me very happy as we're having this conversation tonight on the light rail best practices work, which Mr. Cotterman staffed, and I chaired that committee. I didn't think even 6 weeks from the deadline that we were going to make it, and boy, we made it. So I'm hoping that you will bring all of your tools, which are considerable, to this and make sure we meet those deadlines. And welcome, Janet, to your first council meeting. I know you've been at the city a little while. Like my colleagues, I'm very excited about this. I absolutely support kicking it off. I think about the history here. I think I was vice chair of the Planning Commission when we last did Wilburton, and we envisioned it as an urban village that was places to gather, places to walk, and we still envision it that way, but it's gonna be that and so much more, a lot more intensity. So I have a few comments, may have some questions, but first on the timing. We definitely wanna move things faster. I mean, when we started East Main, John had hair. I'm just kidding, but and that's well, there's a new sheriff in town, Mr. Cotterman, and so we're going to move faster. We are confident of that. So I would not want us to go any slower than the schedule set out. I would like us to go faster, and I think we can probably shave some stuff off on phase 1 and phase 2, and I'll get to that in a minute. I think that the deadlines that are in the schedule, which are based on quarters, need to be based on dates. I'd like to find a date in those quarters, preferably if it's a planning commission, like a date after one of their regular meetings, because that way we can work to the deadline. I think that that would be very helpful at keeping everyone accountable. As planning commission liaison, if we need to add more planning commission meetings, we need to add more planning commission meetings. There's been times back in the aughts when the planning commission was meeting 3 and 4 times a month because there was that much work. This is really important to the future of the city. I think the council needs to step up and have this on our agenda more, and the planning commission needs to, make sure that the staff needs to work with them to get them to do the work. But the actual hard deadlines in there, it will help staff, it will help commission, it will help council, and it will help any of our consultants. It'll also help our stakeholders know that they better get their input in ahead of that if there's hard deadlines in the schedule. That way we don't get something right when it's about ready to be added that, all of a sudden there's all this new information. It'll help everybody if we have those hard deadlines. So how do we shave it off? I think making sure that the scope is really clearly set is really important. And I really appreciated the page 19 or page 8 on the PowerPoint. I can tell you've been listening to the council. That's the one that talks about the scope of what we're going to be looking at going forward. I think the way to make this really work well, Deputy Mayor's talked about what's the baseline. I think we never took approved, recommended alternative from the CAC because we never finished SEPA. But we have the CAC's preferred alternative. Council didn't bless it, but I'm telling you, I'm blessing it. I personally think that that should be the baseline. The density of the preferred alternative from the CAC needs to be the baseline. And the reason that I think that's important, it sets the scope of what we're doing, but it also sets expectation of everyone that's working on this and inputting it. So that's the baseline. And what do I mean by baseline? I mean that we might modify it, but start from there. It might get denser. I would not expect it to get less dense, because we have some serious growth that we need to take into account. So using the preferred alternative as the baseline, what do we then need to do? And this is where your page, I think 8 on your on the PowerPoint comes in place. We need to look at modifying the housing with housing policies, affordable housing, making sure that Wilburton does its share of meeting the growth target for housing and jobs. That's a new piece of information. Making sure that we look at the impacts and integration of the Grand Connection. Making sure we look at sustainability and equity in this development, and making sure that we look at the transportation impacts, including things that have changed. When we started this process, light rail was still years away. Now we're a year away. It's going to be open before this process is done. So how does the light rail work? How does East Trail work, the planning of that? So we'll have transit-oriented development and we'll have trail-oriented development. And then also we have a proposed new access ramp 405 at Lake Hills Connector. How does that feed into that, and how can we make sure that this will be one of the growth areas that serves the future growth in Bellevue, which is going to be severe, which is going to be explosive. I mean, we already know that. I think it's going to take a lot of discipline on our parts too, but on everyone's part to meet this deadline. But that is my expectation, and I hope that my colleagues will also agree that the scope is really important, because if we set the scope right, we can get it done. If the scope is too broad, then everything's on the table, it slows things down, it bogs things down. and it just doesn't work as well. Finally, the Grand Connection Bridge, there was a comment on that. I would love if we had private investment in that, so long as what is being built privately is capable of being phase one and engineered so that we can expand. I mean, we wanted a 4-acre park over 405. If we can have a narrow one now, and we can then use that to expand it later as funds come available, I am all over that, and would be very supportive of giving some big incentives for that. And then on the development agreement, as you all know, I have been advocating that we create a development agreement chapter in our code for quite a while. That's separate and apart from Wilburton, but would love to see that added to the work plan. But yeah, good timing, hard deadlines, limited scope, and let's go.
I second that motion.
Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Zahn, followed by Councilmember Lee.
Yeah, I like that phrase, let's go. I want to thank you for the presentation and the really well thought out timeline that you've given us that really ties how this fits in with the other work that the city's doing that's complementary to that. Because I think that from a context setting standpoint, it's important to see the big picture and how this fits into it with the timelines. I appreciate my colleagues' comments that have been made so far. I want to highlight a couple things that I really like about the presentation. The sustainable and equitable mixed-use neighborhood, I really like that. I think that the word walkable should be in there because I think that that is a huge part of the multimodal transportation that we've been talking about. I like what you said about the fact that this is a bridge area between downtown East Main and Belle Red because I do believe it is. So how we holistically think about this area as that bridge that Councilmember Barksdale talked about that is, what did you say, that it was young professionals and entrepreneurs. And really, I was thinking that this is about vibrant placemaking, which a couple of my fellow council members talked about placemaking, inclusive, multicultural space, which kind of leads me to, as I think about the guiding principles that were developed in 2015, it does seem like it needs to be dusted off for some of these phrases that we are now using that isn't in there before. And I do see that in phase 1B, it says affirm and redefine and refine the Wilburton vision. So perhaps that scope section is talking about the clear scope of work. But I'm wondering if that phase 1B can be overlapping with phase 2. Because what I see is that between phase 2 and 3, there appears to be several month overlap there already. Mm-hmm. So in order to move faster, what if we could be affirming and refining the vision while we're also starting to evaluate future land use alternatives and whatnot? So I'd like for you to consider whether those two can have some concurrent activities in that July to September timeframe to try to cut a little bit of time from that. The fact that we're gonna do some with the overlay with Belle Red, so that scope of work will also be included in here, is that right? I just want to confirm that.
Yeah, there's from 8th up to 12th is in Belle Red.
Okay.
And the comprehensive plan periodic update clearly, people can suggest ideas for the rest of Belle Red as well. So that's another efficiency.
Yeah, that sounds great. So I guess the other part of the schedule is I'm wondering then if in phase 2, as we evaluate the alternatives and proposed plans, whether there would be any, I'm gonna say early wins or some level of changes that could be adopted during that phase 2, so that instead of waiting until we're all the way done in phase 3 with everything, are there any surgical pieces that we would say, as we've gotten to this part, there's a couple things that we could actually launch or implement at that point. And I'm not saying that I have some magic thing that I believe you're gonna show us at that time, but be open to the possibility that within this 2-year period, that even at the end of year 1, or that some part of it could actually be launched if possible. So if you could consider that. On the guiding principles, I guess I'm wondering is that something that we send to the community as part of the re-engagement? Or would we want to, I think, Mayor, keep it for ourselves to say that we want to dust off the vision and actually present that instead of going through a whole process? I don't know if that's something we want to do. My question, and I believe that Councilmember Robertson brought this up, on the Grand Connection on exempting the lid concept, I don't want to slow things down. And at the same time, what I heard when I was at the National League of Cities is that there's a grant for reconnecting communities that would lid over freeways. And if there's grant funding out there, I think we should be figuring out how to pursue that. So whether this is concurrent activity that we're doing in addition to, so it's not embedded within this, I just don't want to lose that opportunity to go after some grant funding for reconnecting communities as part of the lid, if that money might be available to us. And so anyway, other than that, I'm just super excited about this work and getting going. My only other comment would be on the re-engagement. I wondered if we have as inclusive as possible engagement, meaning that it's not just the community and the businesses that are already here, it's the ones that really wish they were here, but they're not able to be here right now, and how we might reach out through the community-based organizations to have that engagement and conversation, because I do think that, we've become more and more unaffordable. So some of the folks that maybe have been here is no longer here, but so we might not actually get those voices otherwise. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a very important issue, and we've been waiting for this for a long time. So, you ask us to move ahead, no question, we want to. From that perspective, it's easy sale. It's easy sell. But when it was briefed by you guys last week, I was very impressed with all the things you laid out, all the interconnection that you're talking about, Grand Connection, Bellevue Corridor, Wilburton itself, Israel. And there's a lot of pieces, And so I ask you, wow, you can actually get all done? And so I'm glad that, I hope that we have the opportunity to do this as a study session, that we can actually dig into it. Because as you have already seen, have witnessed, there are many good ideas already expressed, many different suggestions and many questions asked you. So you're going to come up with many responses. And there are a lot of stakeholders out there, a lot of businesses, and they probably have their own ideas. And we all have our own ideas also. And, we have not articulated most of it, I bet you. I'm not going to articulate any because, it would take you probably 10 hours to listen to me. So it's not possible. But I'm glad we have this opportunity. It's important to do so. I have a concern about what we're doing. Even though, I've been around long enough, evidence is that the East Main we just went through takes 7 years. And I talked to you guys as well. Hopefully we've learned lessons. And one of the lessons, the baseline, I agree with, Deputy Mayor. If we pick the wrong baseline, if we disagree with the baseline, we have concerns about the baseline, you're going to have lots of problems, challenges. It's going to throw your timeline right off the window. So every one of those things that we talk about, requires some real detailed understanding. And I've always said before, the devil is in the detail, and we haven't talked about those. And we address some of it. And I agree with Janice, and her thought about community engagement. I got my ideas about community engagement. I believe that the known stakeholders you mentioned, we need to do that. But also we probably need to have greater community involved in some way, but not in everything. In the things that we believe that is relevant, that they're interested in, that we require their buy-off. Because this thing doesn't just cover, I agree with Councilmember Boxdale also, it's a connection, But to me, it's a connection, but it's in itself, it's part of Bellevue. You need to be, part of everything that people would enjoy, people would use as a valuable thing. And you talk about the timeliness. Many things we looked at, 2018, but who anticipated, as you mentioned, Amazon's going to bring 25,000 people. So we need to have, 10,000 more housing units. But we need to look into the future. We're not just going to satisfy with Amazon bringing 25,000. We're trying to play catch up. We cannot just play catch up. We've got to see, because if Amazon comes, we see them already. Eventually, Amazon may be just a small player. If we had Bellevue Corridor, we said it's going to happen 25 years from when we have the plan there. But it's shortened a lot, significantly. We are not playing catch up. So we got to step up. We got to talk to the stakeholders, the businesses, people, what we can do, what vision we have, because we want to encourage people. If we provide the right infrastructure, the right environment, the right vision, I believe that they will continue to come to support us. If we play catch up, we number one, we may never catch up. We're going to lose people. Amazon can move out tomorrow if they want to. They say, gee, if we can't put in another 25,000, or you have to compete with other business coming here. So we need to figure that in. So what I'm trying to say is there's so many moving pieces. Israel, Bellevue Corridor, good plan is very important. You have done wonderful plans, but plan can change. All the details is going to create situations. Unless we have a good, solid vision and prioritize, like was suggested, some things we can deliver, some things that is important to ensure that the people here, the people may be coming in the future, can see that we have a vision, a plan that prepared to grow with them. That's how we can be successful. Otherwise, if we're just always playing catch up. And
Councilmember Lee, could you please wrap it up?
yeah, my wrap does. I think there's a lot of things going on here. If each of us give you an idea how to fix it, and we don't all agree, we're going to spend a lot of time. And that's evidence in East Main. Okay, so I believe we need to talk to the stakeholders, make sure that what it takes so that we can encourage the future businesses, future residents, future people to come here through our economic development opportunities. And then we have to come up with some baseline we agree to. Then we can do it. Otherwise, we're just going to be talking, we'll just be delaying, and it's not going to happen. So I believe we need to make that for sure. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I'll go ahead and speak, and then I'll let Deputy Mayor and anybody else who wants to say some more. I just think that Wilburton is such a unique opportunity. We can address our sustainable and equitable design of housing and commercial buildings, infrastructure for utilities, and the multimodal transportation. And I'm so excited to do that here. So I appreciate what you've laid out. I think we are all committed to this timeline at the latest, and anything we can do to expedite it, we will work with you to do. But it looks solid to me. The two things that I'm interested in seeing or contemplating is universal design throughout all development there. It really doesn't cost anything more, and it would be great to create design that allows people of all ages and abilities to live together. And also just the sustainable development and infrastructure, making that kind of a goal. Having said that, one of our developers has talked about doing somewhat of an eco-district with it, tapping into the deep sewer system of King County. And I know that King County has a pilot project for that. That's something I would really love to see. That's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So I'm wondering, I don't know what the timeline of King County's pilot project is, if they're going to do it again in a year. I don't know what the timeline is for putting that kind of infrastructure in. Can we work with them and make see if we can make this happen?
Yes, we started some due diligence on learning from the King County staff just last week, actually. So we want to continue that work both with King County and property owners who are interested with that concept and see how, see if there's opportunities out there in the future.
Terrific. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's it for me. So Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Just two quick questions, and I believe that Councilmember Robertson may have touched on it, but just to be more specific, I think your comment was about specific dates, but I want to make sure on the timeline how often this is going to come back to council. Are we looking at quarterly or as needed? But I'd really like to get some specific dates on that. Of course, as needed, but would like to get some specific timeline on that. And then also, and I think, Emil, you had mentioned about the possibility of additional consultants to help move this along. If some of the stakeholders are willing to help expedite by helping to pay for some of these consultants, is that something the city can do, or is that a conflict of interest, or is that something that we can take advantage of to help move this along even further?
On the use of consultants, I think right now we're looking at using city monies for the consultants. I think that's maybe the clearest path, but we are definitely looking for opportunities to have consultants function literally as city staff, and we're trying out some ideas with that actually right now. So that is something that we're looking into. It gets a little bit more complicated when there's private money going to pay for consultants on that. And with the specific dates, yeah, that's something that clearly we wanted to get this fairly simplified for the PowerPoint, and we will get some specific target dates there for all those. It's under the heading of, predictability. People want to know when we're going back to council, when we're going to different groups to engage them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Okay, we'll go with Councilmember Robertson and then Councilmember Zahn.
Thanks. It's been a great discussion. You can tell how excited council is about this. Can you please put up slide 8 on the PowerPoint?
Request for slide 8.
All right. So this has been a really great discussion, and I think that we all agree that we would like to have this done with all due speed, and that the principles of what we want to see here, whether they're exactly in the guiding principles that we gave the CRC or not. I don't know that we want to take the time to update those, but if you look at slide 8, I think that really kind of had the scope and some of the principles that I support and that I've heard discussed by, that's what I said, you've been obviously listening to the council as you drafted this up. So I know we're going to have a motion tonight to move this forward. I would like to, and I'm happy to make a motion to amend that motion, or just ask the person who's going to make the motion, which is the deputy mayor, to include additional information in that motion to make the baseline the CAC preferred alternative, and that then the scope to modify the preferred and refine the preferred alternative would be to address housing policy, affordable housing, growth targets, the Grand Connection, sustainability, equity, universal design, and transportation, including light rail transit, walkability, East Trail, and I guess we'll just leave it.
About multimodal transport.
And multimodal transportation, including light rail transit, walkability, and East Trail. I think that if we set the scope like that, we can compress that first 2 phases, and it will give the public and the stakeholders, staff, and commission members more guidance and make us more efficient.
So I'm going to open up the dais again for comment or questions on what you just proposed there, because you are proposing a draft amendment, and so I want to give everybody a chance to agree or amend. So I'll let you go first, and then we'll go around again. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, no, I'm glad to, because actually that was one thing I wanted to bring up was, when I brought up the vision the first go-around, part of it was to say, instead of spending a bunch of time, doing the affirmation and the refinement of the vision, that we should be establishing that based on, these opportunities and other things that we've been talking about tonight, instead of waiting until we get to July through September to do that work, because I do think it's a way for us to shorten that process. And then the community understands that based on, where we are in the vision, that this is where we're headed. Because otherwise, I feel like we're gonna spend several months doing this effort just to come back to the same place that we would be if we were to vote that in right now. So I support that.
Okay, great. Councilmember Lee.
I support having a baseline, as I said earlier, but I do not want to have a prescript baseline at this moment. I think Councilmember Roberts mentioned CAC. I don't know. I think we need to talk about it. I think the challenge is when we agree to a baseline, clearly that's good for the future of our vision, consistent.
Okay.
And so that, so that needs to be done. Otherwise, we'll be spending all our time arguing, talking, so why did
Yes or
things-
no? I mean, you.
So anyway, so that's,
Okay,
I would like to make that.
okay. Councilmember Stokes.
I agree with Councilmember Robertson's proposal. And actually, I think it's just saying out in public and kind of between us that this is what you're going to do. I mean, it's the way to approach it. I think it's really, and it's an important thing to highlight that. But I think we do that, and then we address a lot of these other issues that people have raised on it, I think, at this point, too. I'm all in favor of that. I think it's really helps us go forward. And on the timeline issue, I think that's something that we can't sit up here and, work around, play around timelines. You have to do it based on what the work is, because you have to do the work and all that. And getting the additional consultants is really good. So I think we're putting this in place, as she suggests, is really, will strengthen this and we can go forward with it.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor, do you have any comments or questions on this?
For it.
For it, okay. Councilmember Barksdale?
Questions, I support it.
Okay, and I think I do too. Thank you for summarizing all that we said. So I will, I'll let you make the motion if you would like with your.
Okay, do you have the actual original motion?
How about I let Deputy Mayor make it because he's written down what you
Okay,
said.
perfect, and then I'll make any corrections if I need it when I second it.
Do you have the additional comments? Because this round, all I did was comment on
Okay.
Councilmember Robertson's. I'm just asking the question, to be clear.
We can, if we need to, go around again.
Okay, well, so.
Can I ask people to limit the time?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, so we talked about the vision. I guess my comment was about the Phase 1, Phase 2 overlap. I didn't get a comment back whether that was possible. And then my comment about the Grand Connection lid, whether within this or a parallel effort, so that if we can pursue, connected community grant. So those were two questions I had that I didn't actually get a response to.
Yeah, as far as, I think our response on any efficiencies, we're gonna look into those ideas more, so that's a solid idea to give to us. We would like to look into that a little bit more before we kind of overpromise that is gonna be any more efficient than how we've proposed it. And then clearly, looking at grants is something that we continually do, and that's a good lead on a specific type of grant to go look for that reconnecting and the lid concept there.
Okay, thank you. That was it.
That's great. That's what I understood them to say as well, because those are good recommendations. Any other comments or questions? Okay. Would you like to make the motion?
Certainly, Mayor, and I'll combine the original motion with Jennifer's amendment. So I move to direct staff to initiate work on the Wilburton Vision Implementation, Comprehensive Plan Amendment, and Land Use Code Amendment, and to use the CAC preferred alternative as a baseline. This will be the starting point, with the scope of working being to evaluate that preferred alternative to determine whether updates are needed to consider housing policy, growth targets, the Grand Connection, the impacts and integration, sustainable and equitable, and multimodal transportation such as East Rail walkability and the proposed Lake Hills Connector access ramp.
And I'll second with a friendly amendment to that. the housing policy, including affordable housing. And then I think the mayor wanted to add universal design as well.
Thank you.
So, and that's acceptable to you, Deputy Mayor? Is the motion?
Acceptable.
All right, I will second that. Thank you.
Thank you.
The staff, did you get all that?
Yes, we're scribbling here, yes.
Do you need us to say it again?
Sure, that would be helpful, I think.
We'll
Just to
let
make sure.
Councilmember Robertson add the friendly amendment
Yes.
if you'd like.
Well, I just added it here.
Okay.
Yeah. Although the housing policy.
We have the recording.
And you got the recording as
have it-
well?
we
Okay,
have it
then I
noted.
think we're good.
All right. Is there a second?
I seconded, yeah.
It's been seconded.
All right. And do you have a question or comment?
Yeah, question and comment. I made my statement. I don't know why, you want to designate a specific baseline. I don't know we don't know all the details. What I'm talking about is CEC recommendations, a baseline. It's a study session, and we need to know what we are agreeing to. I agree to going ahead with the thing, but I have a lot of detail, as I mentioned before, that, you are putting down specifically. We have raised a lot of questions.
Well, we have a motion on the table.
Yeah.
You can vote for it or against it. And so we're going to take the vote.
Do you mind if I answer that?
Go ahead.
I'd
Yeah.
like to take the vote.
If you want to just do it this way, then there's no reason.
Why you decided what you decide. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
I oppose.
Okay. So we have 6-4 and 1 against.
And state the reason why I oppose, okay?
So now we have a ordinance 6659 that was pulled from the consent calendar. Mr. Miyake, would you like to introduce that?
Excuse me, Mayor, if you could just give me a minute to bring this up real quick.
Yes.
Excuse me, Mayor. So ordinance, was it 6659, is an ordinance amending a number of sections of the Bellevue City Code to reinstate limitations on members of commissions and boards attending meetings remotely. This particular matter was talked about with the council at an earlier council meeting where there was quite a bit of discussion that took place here. This particular ordinance was pulled by Councilmember Robertson, who I guess would like to comment on this particular ordinance before you take this up on the other resolutions and ordinances.
How about we make a motion and then we can discuss it? Would you like to make a motion?
Adopt ordinance 6659, amending sections of the Bellevue City Code to reinstate limitations on members of commissions and boards attending meetings remotely.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Do we have any comments or?
I do.
Questions?
I do. I think this is the first time in, I don't even know how long that I've pulled something from consent, because I feel very strongly about it, and I didn't want to vote in favor of it, because I don't think it's the right policy for the city. And I'll just say my piece, and then we can have our vote. As we've been back 2 weeks in person, I remember how important it is that we be in person, to connect with each other, to connect with our staff, and to connect with and be accountable to the public. I think that that's really important. And I think the policy that would be adopted if this passes will not honor that commitment to public service and commitment to colleagues, et cetera. Equity, I think, can be met by allowing people to go remote as an accommodation for longer. It can also be met by having a similar type of policy that the council does, where 2 people can be remote up to 4 times, each person can be remote up to 4 times a year. But I imagine what could happen as this is written. You could have a commission meeting where 3 people are remote and 1 person is sitting in that room, and that is a quorum. And the 1 person sitting in that room, you could have the chair be remote. I don't think that would be very effective. There's just not enough limitations on this. There's not even a limitation that the person chairing the meeting has to be in person. There's not a requirement that someone couldn't just sign up without any need for accommodation, just because they like to travel a lot, and be remote every single meeting. I don't think that that serves the needs of the public, and I don't think it serves the needs of making sure that the boards and commissions provide really good advocacy and input to the council. If you don't have people connecting with each other, they can't operate as a board. I know that, I don't know about the rest of you, but I really felt that we weren't as connected in the 2 years that we weren't together. There's a lot that goes on other than what you're saying into the microphone when it's time for debate. There's, and I just think that we give that the short shrift if we allow this to go forward. So I cannot support the motion. I'll be voting no.
Any other comments or questions? Excuse me. Any other comments or questions on this motion?
I already said it. No, I asked to speak.
About
okay?
this motion that's before
Under the
us?
motion.
Yes,
It's okay to speak?
please.
Okay. Councilmember Robertson said many things, and I don't necessarily agree with all of them. But one thing I do agree is that when we have commissioners, people in the community who volunteer to serve, they've made a commitment to do so. It's important that, we know that, they know that, and the public knows that. And we do the best we can to honor that commitment. And I think we realize there are other situations that make it difficult for them. But those things can be made to accommodate them, whatever they may be, whatever they may be. The spirit is that they need to be accommodated. If they are not, then it's for the council to make the decisions because we appoint them. So we need to make sure that we all have, keep up with the number one spirit of things and the practical execution of the things. And yes, COVID-19, all this make it difficult. So we need to make everything we can do to accommodate. But I agree that we have to make sure the commitment is there. So I supported that the last meeting when we talked about it because I don't think it's such a big deal. And as we know, the mayor always wanted the things to be simple, straightforward. So I say I could support that. But since the issue is brought up, I would, go with Councilmember Robertson, and I would.
Okay.
Actually, I would request to reconsider it. That's what I would like to do. But if you're not going to do that because you have the majority, well, nothing much I can do except vote what I believe.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to speak in clarification that it says here that not to exceed a maximum of 3 board or commission members attending remotely per meeting. So I'll be voting in favor of it because I think about all the people I know who have wanted to participate in local government but have not been able to due to physical disabilities. So I'm really happy to provide an opportunity for people to participate remotely. Any other comments or questions? Councilmember Barksdale?
Yeah, I'll just, one of the points I raised before was it creates an opportunity for access, whether it's as a result of disability or, not being able to get to a meeting in time. We decided to review this after a year, and I'd much rather we proceed with what we have and not micromanage, because that's how I see it, and revisit and see how it's working in a year.
That's right, that was a part of it as well. I'm going to let Deputy Mayor comment. I'll come around to you when we're all done.
No, it's a good point that we did put in some language there that we would revisit in a year, and I appreciate Councilmember Robertson's point on this and Councilmember Lee. And I think that year timeline makes a lot of sense. I'm just wondering if there be an amendment in there, just saying that, understanding that in person is preferred, but up to 3 is possible. I'm not sure that would make a big difference. Maybe it won't, but it would be great to at least encourage people to attend in person if at all possible.
Do you want to make a motion for that amendment and see if anybody has comments or questions?
I can certainly do that, Mayor. So I move that we amend the ordinance to include an understanding that in-person attendance at boards and commissions is preferred.
Second.
Okay. So let's go ahead and have comment or questions on the amendment, and then we'll shift back to the other main motion. Okay, any comments or questions on the amendment? Councilmember Lee.
Thank you.
We'll shift back to the main motion.
I agree with Councilmember Barksdale completely. I think we need to make accommodations. But by just making a change like this, we're not going to
Councilmember
make
Lee.
effort to
Sorry,
accommodate.
excuse me for interrupting you. We are commenting on the new amendment to the motion, which is that it's, say it again, the language.
That it is preferred that in-person attendance whenever possible.
So do you want to add that to this motion, yes or no?
I mean, add what?
This amendment that Deputy Mayor has suggested.
No, because it's not adequate. I wanted to make my statement and.
Would you like to make an amendment to his amendment?
Well, my amendment would be, we'll make every effort to accommodate. And if we don't do, the reason is, if we don't do that, we're not going to make an effort to accommodate. Just, well, okay.
That's not what we're discussing right now. You're discussing the main motion, and right now, we're just discussing whether or not we want to add this language. And then we can decide if we want to add another motion to the main motion, or if we want to pass or not pass the main motion, with or without this amendment. So would you, I'm going to let other people comment. Do you have any comments or questions on the Deputy Mayor's motion?
I'm comfortable with the amendment.
Okay. Okay. Go ahead, Councilmember
I would like
Stokes.
to move to postpone the discussion and vote on this. I think we need to think about it and have a little more discussion before we set something up like this.
Okay. Councilmember Robertson.
I would support the amendment. I would also support postponing, and I would support another amendment that says at least 4 commissioners must be in person.
I think that's what this says on the.
No, because you could have 3 people absent, 1 person there, and 3 people on the phone. And that would be a quorum. And that's a problem.
I can't
It
see.
says the people on the phone are counted.
Not to exceed a maximum of 3 board or commission members attending remotely per meeting.
Right, but you can have 3 people absent, 1 person in person, 3 people on the phone, and you have a quorum. Because it says, such remote participation will be considered attendance at the meeting and shall be counted towards determination of a quorum. So I support Deputy Mayor's amendment, but I would propose another amendment that says at least 4 commissioners shall be present in person. But I'm also supporting postponing because it's getting late.
Would you do me a favor? Will you look at the packet on page 1?
I'm looking at this.
Under the background analysis.
I'm looking at the ordinance, though.
I know, but I'm just asking you to look at this. Councilmember Zahn.
Yeah, so, as I'm listening to my colleagues, here's a couple things I've been thinking about. Ultimately, it's.
We're commenting on the Deputy Mayor's
No,
amendment, just to let you know.
I understand, but, the amendment is about the fact that we prefer people to be in person and that we would make accommodations. And when I think about universal design, it's not just about physical spaces. It's about process. It's about how we create a space of inclusion, however people show up. And I am a little concerned that if we put in these prefer in person and accommodations, what we're really saying is that if you are someone who is physically not able to attend, then you are somehow treated as less than, and we have to accommodate you. Okay. And that philosophy I just find to be, problematic.
Okay. So I feel like it's covered enough in the packet, and I'm wondering, if the actual proposal here, the ordinance, is worded the way the packet is, because the packet, it covers it.
Room, 1 commissioner in the room, and 3 on the phone, and 3 absent, under the ordinance as written.
Okay. So I like the way it says here in the packet that no more than 3 members of boards or commissions are to participate remotely at any one meeting.
Correct, Mayor, but what Councilmember Robertson is saying is, let's say you had only 4 members
who participated out of 7, so 3 were absent. 3 could be participating remotely, and only 1 would be participating in person. I believe that is Councilmember Robertson's point, correct?
I would say you would reschedule that meeting.
Well, you have a quorum. You do have a quorum.
All right.
Yeah, I would recommend that we change it so that there's a quorum in person. But maybe we should postpone it and have this discussion another day.
I think we're going to end up with something, we're going to look back and say, why did we do this? There are too many different concepts. The concept of having some person who could not make meetings permanently not have to go to the meeting, that's a separate concept. We need to talk about that.
Okay.
And it's not included in this.
I'm going to take the motions off the table, and I'm going to give everybody a chance to ask staff what they care about, or questions they have, or what they want to see in this, and then ask staff to come back with something that, if we have a consensus of what we want to see.
Yeah.
Mayor, technically at this point, the motion belongs to the entire body.
Yes.
So you would need a motion to remove that from the table.
I have a motion.
Remove the amendment.
Second.
And the motion.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, good. So we'll just go down the table here. Councilmember Robertson.
What I would like to see in an ordinance is, 1, allowing remote participation, either as an accommodation for a longer period or up to 4 a year per commissioner, unless there's an accommodation, and no more than 2 on the phone. I'd also like to see there needing to be an in-person quorum of 4 before you have remote participation. So a remote participation would not, you'd have to have 4 people in person at every meeting, and then 2 could be remote. 2 or 3 could be remote, or no, 2 could be remote.
Okay. Councilmember Stokes.
I would agree with that. One of the concerns we've had and problems in some of the commissions has been lack of attendance for a lot of reasons, and this doesn't necessarily address that by, but I can go with this as
Okay.
Councilmembers.
Councilmember Zahn.
I want to talk about values versus specificity. So for me, I want to make sure that our boards and commissions, when we think about universal design, it isn't just physical space, it's about participation. That what we value is, as my colleagues talked about, that people are committed, they're engaged, and they're going to participate. I personally don't believe that physically being in a seat is the only way to measure whether someone is participating, engaged, or committed. And while I appreciate accommodation, I think that it assumes that somebody who physically can't come to a meeting is an accommodation versus that we are setting process that welcomes them regardless. And so I am speaking about it this way because whatever we finally end up with voting on, I want to make sure that we are creating that inclusive space where we're not elevating physically abled people who can participate versus those that may not be able to.
Okay.
Thanks.
I'm going to agree with Councilmember Zahn. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, my thoughts on this is create as much accessibility as possible, as I think we have come close to here, but also recognizing that it's important I mean, everyone's going to be adults in this, and I think the pandemic has showed that. I agree with Councilmember Zahn in terms of, someone's value is not being in a seat necessarily, it's participating and showing up, and there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. However, I do think there's some value in people actually, being in person to these. So my request is that we highlight that, but we also accommodate whenever needed or necessary, either on a permanent or a temporary basis.
Councilmember Lee.
I agree with what Deputy Mayor stated, with one additional thing is that we could, like you mentioned, reevaluate after 1 year based on what we're doing, because I think we can, have the commissions themselves see how well they are working or not working. I think that's
That's a good idea. I think that we should make sure that we do let the commission evaluate after a year. Councilmember Rexdale.
Yeah, I think what I would like to see is an equity assessment of whatever policy comes up from that staff brings back. And I just want to note, the challenge I think with having the 4 in person and only that there has to be at least 4. If you have 3 people remote and somebody doesn't show up or drops out at the last minute, that creates now they're not in compliance with that code. I just think I would really like to bias toward equity on this one, so I'll leave it there.
Okay. So we'll have a recommendation brought back to us based on what we've said and with maybe a weigh-in from our DEI.
Yeah, we'll take all the feedback that we just received from the council and try to bring something back to you for consideration.
I appreciate the discussion tonight, I really do. Okay, and with that, we are adjourned.